Chapter 599. She didn't give him a good look either as she returned the favor. Muyaja's face turned cold. He stretched out his long arm and turned her shoulders over. Speak. What did you mean by what you said just now? I don't mean anything else. I just think you're dirty. Yin Shirshir glared at him and said coldly, I'm not done yet. Please get out. You're not going to speak? Yin Shirshir continued to scrub her body, treating his words as air. The man lost his patience in the end. He pulled her into his arms and drained all the foam in the sink. He turned on the shower and started to scrub her body. Yin Shirshir pushed him, and water splashed all over him as she struggled. Muyaja wouldn't allow her to mess around, so he pressed her heavily into the bathtub and clamped her wrists tightly with one arm. In this way, she completely lost the ability to resist. The water quickly filled up, and he changed the tub of warm water again. Muyaja patiently helped her wipe her body. Yin Shirshir couldn't break free from him, so she gave up struggling and let him wipe all the foam off her body. He lowered his head and saw her stubborn face. On her fair face, her eyes were misty and her red lips were pursed into a line. Even when he was wiping her, he didn't know what to do and hurt her, but even so, she didn't make a sound. She was as stubborn as an injured little beast. It was as if she was suppressing herself and isolating herself from the world. However, she didn't think about who was the one overturning the world at this moment. He was displeased by her indifference. Muyaja pinched her chin and asked her, Are you angry? Yin Shirshir pursed her lips and didn't say anything. She ignored him and ignored him. No matter how many times he repeated himself, she turned a blind eye and treated him as air. She ignored him. Muyaja sneered. He wanted to see how long she could stand it. Yin Shirshir closed her eyes tightly, but she suddenly felt a strange sensation coming from a certain part of her body. She was shocked and her body shivered. However, he didn't allow her to escape and easily held her in his arms. Yin Shirshir glared at him angrily, her eyes red. Muyaja pressed her under his body. Just one arm pressed on her shoulder, and it was as if she was nailed. The difference in strength between the two of them was too great, and she couldn't fight him at all. She stared straight at him, watching as he took off his shirt with one hand and pressed his body down heavily. His thin lips sealed her tightly pursed lips. No matter how she tried to dodge, he had the ability to subdue her. The showerhead was still spraying water. They let the warm water submerge their bodies. Muyaja pressed his lips against hers, unscrupulously and fiercely taking her. At first, she tried her best to endure and bite the root. Even if he was ruthless, she didn't make a sound. But Muyaja clearly wanted to torture her. She couldn't suppress the surging emotions in her body anymore. She couldn't help but moan and sink in it. Muyaja. She called out his name, and made her last weak resistance. She reached out to push his shoulder, but he grabbed her hand. He looked down and sucked on her jade-like white fingertips. Gradually, his movements were no longer rash and gradually became gentle. Chapter 600. He carried her out of the bathroom. In the huge bedroom, he dominated the world. They spent the whole night together. He didn't remember how long it had been since he last touched her. He missed her so much that his body had been suppressed. In a daze, Yin Shirshir couldn't remember how many times he had done it with her. However, his domineering nature was once again evident in matters of the heart. He kissed her eyebrows, her lips, and her collarbone. This is mine. Then he kissed her shoulder blade, fingertips, and waist. This is mine. He took her fiercely. Muyaja wanted her fiercely. This can only belong to me. It was as if he wanted to carve his name, his breath, and his brand on her body. Yin Shirshir, every inch of your body is mine. Yin Shirshir suddenly cried and complained uncontrollably. What about you? Do you belong to me? Muyaja paused in his actions as he looked at the woman who had suddenly burst into tears. Do you belong to me here? She touched his lips. Do you belong to me here too? She stroked his chest. Did you say these words to Muwanru? Did you kiss her lips and want her like you want me? If I'm yours, what about Muwanru? He was jealous. How could she not be jealous? He was mad with jealousy. How could she not be mad with jealousy? They were not equal. How could he ask her to belong to him completely? At dawn, Muyaja went into the bathroom to take a shower. Wearing a bathrobe, he walked slowly to the window and lit a cigarette expressionlessly. With the sound of the lighter, the mellow smell of burning tobacco filled the room. He stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window. A wisp of pure and thick smoke dispersed from between his lips. Through the reflection of the window, the person on the bed was curled up helplessly in a deep sleep. He walked to the bed and sat on the edge. He lowered his head to look at her sleeping face. Even in deep sleep, her delicate eyebrows were still tightly knitted. Her black hair was scattered around the pillow, contrasting with her fair skin. She was inconceivably beautiful. He had done it a few times. Perhaps it was too hard, so her face was full of exhaustion. Wuxia reached out and lifted a strand of her hair. He lowered his eyes and sniffed the fragrance of her hair. Taking a deep breath, his handsome eyes suddenly opened slightly. Her words rang in his ears. You want me to belong to you. Do you belong to me too? If I'm yours, what about Mu Wanru? Does she belong to you too? Do you belong to her too? With his keen intuition, he guessed that something must have happened during this period of time. Mu Wanru? Did Mu Wanru tell her something? It was just a guess. Before she left the country, he had specially assigned a group of bodyguards to protect her no matter where she went. According to the report, she had been filming for the past few days and had not had much contact with anyone else. When Yin Shirshir woke up, the sun was already high in the sky. The curtains were tightly drawn, and the thick darkness in the bedroom was almost suffocating. There was no one beside the bed. Holding her groggy head, she sat up on the bed and lifted the blanket. She had unknowingly changed into a bathrobe and her body had been meticulously cleaned. Chapter 601. Yin Shirshir heaved a sigh of relief. She struggled to move her body, only to realize that her thighs were sore and swollen. Why did it hurt so much? Memories of their passionate night came back to her, and her face turned red all the way to her ears. She frowned and tried to move her thighs. She lifted the blanket and got off the bed. Only then did she realize what it was, and her legs went weak. Her whole body felt like it was falling apart, and she could barely stand. She held onto the bedside table and took deep breaths to calm her heartbeat. She then walked into the bathroom to wash up. From the corner of her eye, she caught a glimpse of the red hickeys on the back of her neck in the mirror. She lifted the collar of her bathrobe and saw that her collarbone and body were covered in crisscrossing hickeys. It was a ghastly sight. This man was extraordinarily domineering in bed. After Yin Shirshir got dressed and washed up, she opened the bedroom door. Outside the door, a row of servants stood respectfully and reverently, their expressions respectful. Miss Yin, good morning. Their simultaneous greetings gave her a fright. Yin Shirshir was stunned for a moment. She looked around and saw a row of uniformed servants standing by the door with respectful and courteous smiles on their faces. You all. Yin Shirshir put her hands behind her back uneasily. She subconsciously clutched her collar in an attempt to cover up the hickeys he had left on her body. Young master has gone out. Lunch is ready for you. Sitting at the dining table, Yin Shirshir looked at the sumptuous spread on the table. Even though it looked, smelled, and tasted good, she was not in the mood to taste it. It was as if she was chewing on wax. The Mu family. Wuxia had just entered the house when he saw Mu Sheng sitting on a chair with a cane. Mu Wanru was standing beside him, gently massaging his shoulders. Seeing him return, Mu Sheng's face darkened instantly. His face was ashen, and his gaze, as sharp as an eagle's, landed on him. It was frightening. Wuxia curled his lips. Grandpa. Mu Sheng was inexplicably furious. He slammed his cane on the table, and a violent aura rushed toward him. Do you still see me as your grandfather? Wuxia stood at the door and glanced at Mu Wanru from the corner of his eyes. The latter shrunk her shoulders when she saw his fierce gaze, and a timid fear appeared on her face. Mu Sheng was furious. Suppressing his anger, he asked, I heard that you returned to the country yesterday, but you didn't come home. Where did you go last night? Wuxia's gaze fell on his grandfather, his face calm and composed. Grandpa, I came home to announce something. Answer my question first. Mu Sheng's anger had yet to subside, so he was not in the mood to listen to him. He threw a magazine at him. Wuxia did not reach out to catch it. The magazine fell to the ground with the cover facing up. It was a photo taken by the media at Huan Yu's annual cocktail party. In the photo, Yin Shirshir was dressed in splendid attire. She looked back and smiled. It was just the side of her face, but it was stunning. Who is this woman? Muyaja glanced at her coldly before retracting his gaze and keeping quiet. Mu Wanru immediately bent over to persuade him. Grandpa, calm down. She's just a small-time celebrity in the entertainment industry. Why are you angry over this? Chapter 602. Such a woman can forget about stepping into the Mu family. Grandpa, don't make things difficult for him. Anyway, his heart has never been on me. I'm already used to it. Mu Wanru pretended to be aggrieved. She pretended to speak up for her grandpa, but she was secretly pleased with herself. With Mu Xing backing her, what was Yun Shirshir to her? Even if Mu Yaja wanted to marry Yun Shirshir, with Mu Xing stopping him, it was impossible for him to step into the Mu family. Her heart toward Mu Yaja was completely dead. This man's heart, from the beginning to the end, had never been with her. This man never had her in his eyes. Even when he got engaged to her 6 years ago, it was only because of Mu Sheng that he was reluctant to do so. The wedding was postponed again and again because he treated her as nothing. He had never touched her before. If a man did not even touch a woman, it could only mean that she meant nothing to him. It was not that she had not tried and tried her best, but even when she stripped naked in front of him, this man did not even look at her. His eyes were even filled with disgust. She had the title of the Mu family's young madam, but it was only in name. Right now though, the most important thing for her was to establish her status as young Madam Mu and get married to Mu Yaja as soon as possible. Besides that, so what if Mu Yaja did not love her? With wealth and glory, she did not care if she could not win Mu Yaja's heart. This was the sad part of a rich family's marriage. Thinking of this, she felt relieved. Mu Xing did not know what Mu Wanru was thinking. He only saw the lonely and sad expression on her face. His heart ached for her tolerance and compromise. He felt even more indignant for her. He turned to glare at Mu Yaja, his face flushed red with anger. Yaja, look at how Wanru treats you and how you treat her. Grandpa doesn't care if you're just toying with that woman or not. As an experienced person, Grandpa can tell you that none of the actresses in the entertainment industry are good. They look pure on the surface, but deep down, they're lewd and despicable. I don't care about anything. Anyway, Wanru's status as the legal wife is right here, and no one can replace her. Mu Yaja sneered and curled his lips. Legal wife. Mu Xing did not notice the playfulness and mockery that flashed past his eyes. His anger dissipated a little under Mu Wanru's consolation. Calmly he said, if you like any woman, even if you want to marry her as your second wife, Grandpa won't have any objections as long as the girl's family background is clean. But which woman in the entertainment industry didn't want to climb up the social ladder? Even if she marries into the Mu family as a concubine, I will never allow it. Climb the social ladder? Yun Shirshir needed to be rich? Mu Yaja even suspected that if he let Yun Shirshir marry into the Mu family, her precious son might not even care about the Mu family. A 7-year-old child controlled the world's #1 toy empire. Just as he said, this child was not as simple as he thought. You might not even care about the Mu family. Yin Tianyo's arrogant words still rang in his ears. Mu Yaja, let me tell you, mommy is a treasure in my heart. If you want to dote on my mommy, you must do so legitimately. Chapter 603. Yin Shirshir, on the other hand, wanted a family. Then he would give them a family. A family of 4 with him, her and 2 children. His son was more outstanding than him. At a young age, he already had a net worth of hundreds of millions. The Mu family was nothing to him. Mu Yaja's thin lips parted slightly, and his words were as cold as ice. Grandpa, I think you're mistaken about something. Hearing him speak, the old man was baffled. His eagle-like eyes narrowed as a strange feeling arose in his heart. What do you mean? What did I get wrong? This woman will be my wife, the future young mistress of the Mu family, and the woman I've set my mind on. What? Hearing this, the old man was instantly enraged, but more than that, he was in disbelief. He had watched him grow up, so he knew him better than anyone else. Mu Yaja had been an outstanding child from a young age due to his strict etiquette. He was different from those second-generation heirs from other wealthy families who were ignorant and incompetent. They spent their days indulging in debauchery, seeking pleasure, and having countless women by their side. Wuxia was almost cold and indifferent toward women. He had once thought that his precious grandson was just playing around with this woman on a whim, that was all. When he got sick of her one day, he would settle down. Who would have thought that he would actually tell him that he was serious about this? He was serious about marrying that woman, and even said something as unreasonable as the woman I've set my mind on? If this woman was a well-bred young lady of the same social status as the Mu family, it would be fine. His grandfather would also approve of her. However, this woman was an actress in the entertainment industry. Such a woman had no right to step through the Mu family's doors. A ruthless look surfaced on the old man's face. He glared coldly at Wuxia and bellowed. "How dare you? Are you ignoring Grandpa's words? Didn't I tell you before that such a woman can forget about stepping through the Mu family's doors? Did you not take Grandpa's words to heart?" Mu Wanru was the first to interrupt him. "Grandpa, don't be angry. You know it too. Which woman in the entertainment industry wasn't good at scheming?" He was very shrewd. Some women were born to be good at seducing men. She was the reincarnation of a vixen. At most, Aja was just on a whim. Even if he wants to marry that woman and make her his concubine, I will agree. Mu Xing retorted angrily. "Agree to what? Wanru, it's not that Grandpa wants to scold you, but why are you so heartless? If such a woman marries into the Mu family, it's obvious that she's here to compete with you. You've always been pure and innocent. Do you want Grandpa to watch you scheme against another woman? You don't care about yourself, but Grandpa cares about you." Mu Wanru smiled shyly and mumbled. "But Aja likes that woman, doesn't he? There was nothing he could do about it. I also hope that he can dote on me more, but feelings can't be forced." Wuxia's handsome eyes narrowed as his gaze landed on Mu Wanru. She was born with an extremely pleasing mouth. Her words were sweeter than honey, and could coax the old man into submission. It was no wonder that he doted on her so much, to the point of doting on her to the bone. She usually put in a lot of effort into him. Chapter 604. Just like the other old people, he lacked companionship and protection. He was usually busy with work and rarely came home to accompany him. For some reason, Xiao Yichen was not close to the old man. Hence, the person who spent the most time with him was Mu Wanru. Mu Wanru had spent a lot of effort on him. He arranged for her to be the HR director of Dishing Group and a core member of the board of directors. She could be said to be second only to one person in the Mu group. Even if she was busy with work, she would end her work early and rush back to accompany him. It could be said that he was very dependent on Mu Wanru. Perhaps it was because he missed Mu Wanru so much that he was sick, but he was almost morbidly attached to her. His health was deteriorating day by day, and he had to take a lot of medicine every day. As he got older and was troubled by his illness, his temper flared up. When his illness acted up, he would be unusually irritable, and no one could persuade him. Only when Mu Wanru was by his side, coaxing and lying, would the old man be willing to take the medicine. Mu Wanru's soft and coquettish words were very effective on Grandpa Mu. It was obvious that he was completely under her control. Wuxia's eyes darkened, and his lips curled into a cold smile. Hence, when he heard Mu Wanru's pretense of generosity and grievance, he was even more furious. He slammed the table and bellowed. "What do you mean by like? Does this chap know what like is? Is marriage based on like enough? Wanru, don't worry. Even if this chap insists on bringing that woman into the Mu family, as long as Grandpa is around, I won't sit back and do nothing. Grandpa is on your side. I'll definitely stand up for you." Mu Wanru's watery eyes were smiling, but she was helpless. "Grandpa, sigh. Grandpa, I have something to announce to you when I'm back." "What's the matter?" Mu Xing grumpily asked. Wuxia slowly walked to the sofa and sat down. His body sank slightly into the sofa, and his posture was as leisurely and arrogant as an overlord. His slender legs were elegantly crossed. His handsome eyes were slightly opened, and cold words escaped from his lips. "I want to break off the engagement with Wanru." "What?" Mu Xing's face drained of color when he heard that. He slammed the table and stood up in disbelief. "What did you just say?" "I said it very clearly just now. I want to break off the engagement with her." Wuxia seemed to turn a blind eye to his anger, and calmly repeated, "I won't allow it." Mu Xing blurted out without a second thought. The fury on his face was on the verge of eruption. I don't know what's wrong with you, but you actually want to cancel the engagement. I think you're a bastard. Mu Yaja sneered. Grandfather, since you like her so much, why don't you take her as your concubine? Hearing that, the old man flew into a rage and nearly had a stroke. Shut up. That's ridiculous. Mu Yaja's lips curled into a smile. In the past, he would have stopped talking at this point. He had never once disobeyed his grandfather's words. However, it was different today. Mu Yaja retorted. Grandpa, you're forcing me to marry a woman I don't like. That's ridiculous. Chapter 605. This brat had clearly grown up and was no longer putting him, his grandfather, in his eyes. He actually dared to say that he wanted to annul the engagement. Mu Xing supported himself on the table as he glared at him furiously. This engagement was set by him, and no one was allowed to annul it. Even his most beloved grandson was not allowed to do so. Mu Yaja raised his eyes and met his grandfather's expressionless gaze. Seeing how protective he was of Mu Wanru and how furious he was at the mention of annulling the engagement, he was even more certain that Grandpa Mu's feelings for Mu Wanru were not purely the concern of an elder toward a junior. Instead, it was an obsession that was almost twisted and sick. Mu Qingqing, that woman whom Grandpa Mu had been longing for all this while. Grandpa Mu was obsessed with his daughter. Not only did he keep the jade pendant that Mu Qingqing had left with him, but his bedside was also filled with photos of Mu Qingqing when she was young. Grandpa Mu's longing for his beloved daughter was enough to see. Mu Yaja did not know what kind of woman Mu Qingqing was. His father, and even Grandpa Mu were obsessed with her. It was rumored that Mu Lianqing, who was Mu Yaja's father, also had feelings for Mu Qingqing. As for Mu Qingqing, the capital's #1 singer, he had once pursued her passionately. Alas, Mu Xing cut off all his thoughts about Mu Qingqing. At that time, Mu Lianqing already had a marriage alliance with the capital's Jiang family's daughter. This marriage alliance was of utmost importance to the Mu group. More importantly, Mu Xing was very conservative and had a strong prejudice against singers. Naturally, he did not agree to Mu Lianqing marrying this woman. Mu Lianqing had no choice but to compromise. He proposed a condition, which was for Mu Xing to acknowledge Mu Qingqing as his adopted daughter. Mu Xing agreed to it immediately. Mu Qingqing became the Mu family's adopted daughter as a matter of course. At that time, many wealthy families in the capital coveted Mu Qingqing. Her beauty and talent were undeniable. Initially, Mu Xing did not like Mu Qingqing and did not give her any face. But Mu Qingqing remembered the Mu family's kindness to her. She was grateful to the Mu family. Hence, she served him well in all matters, big or small. Gradually, he developed feelings for her other than kinship. He had fallen in love with this pretty girl from the bottom of his heart. He loved Mu Qingqing to the bone, and a perverted possessiveness grew in his heart. Whenever Mu Qingqing got too close to any man, he would fly into a rage and fly into a rage. Later on, Mu Xing wanted to take Mu Qingqing in as his fourth wife. This decision caused the entire Mu family to be shocked. It also scared Mu Qingqing. She only had filial piety for him and nothing else. Alas, he wished for her to stay by his side and serve him forever. Mu Lianqing was the first to object, and the relationship between the father and son became strained. In the end, they became enemies. Just then, Mu Qingqing stood up and told him that she already had a man in her heart. The two of them were in love, and she was already pregnant with his child at that time. Hearing this, Mu Xing flew into a rage and ordered her to abort the child. She refused to comply and left the Mu family that very night, disappearing without a trace. Chapter 606. In fact, that was not the case. The truth he found out was that, in order to find Mu Qingqing, Mu Xing did not hesitate to turn the capital upside down. He sent a large number of men, and even mobilized the military to track down Mu Wanru's whereabouts. He ordered, Mu Qingqing wants to see a living person. Leave no children alive. Cut the weeds and dig up the roots. The Mu family was determined not to leave any bastards alive. Mu Qingqing was unfortunately involved in a car accident to avoid the pursuit of the men sent by Mu Xing. Her car flipped off a cliff, and she died. A beautiful woman died an untimely death. Her two children, on the other hand, disappeared without a trace. No one knew if they were alive, and no one knew if they were dead or alive. When he learned of Mu Qingqing's death, Mu Sheng was heartbroken. The pain of losing his beloved daughter was so excruciating that he fell ill. For 5 whole years, he was bedridden, absent-minded, and depressed. It was only when he recovered from his illness that he thought that since Mu Wanru was no longer around, he should at least find his 2 children. 15 years ago, due to a freak combination of factors, Mu Wanru was brought back to the Mu family by Mu Sheng. He truly doted on her, just like how he doted on Mu Wanru back then. However, this doting was not so pure. When they were young, Mu Yaja happened to pass by the living room and saw Mu Wanru taking an afternoon nap on the sofa. Mu Sheng sat by the sofa and watched her quietly. From time to time, he would brush away her messy hair and caress her cheeks with his old fingers. His eyes were fixed on her face. It was as if he could see Mu Qingqing's shadow through Mu Wanru. The love and gentleness on his face revealed a hint of morbid distortion. He lowered his head and kissed Mu Wanru on the lips. Mu Yaja knew in his heart that the reason why Mu Sheng arranged this marriage was because his obsession and lovesickness for Mu Wanru was in his bones. At first, he did not care much about his marriage. He thought that marriage was nothing more than a formality, and anyone could do it. Now, however, he had his own obsession. He was determined to call off the engagement. Mu Yaja no longer looked at Mu Sheng's ruthless face. Instead, he slowly stood up. His lips curled into a disdainful smile. "Grandpa, no matter what you think, I've made up my mind. I'll hold a family meeting to announce the cancellation of my engagement with her." "You dare?" Mu Sheng, too, stood up with the help of his walking stick. Glaring at him, his wrinkled hand trembled as he gripped the walking stick tightly. "As long as I'm around, your marriage agreement will be valid for a day. I will never allow you to cancel your engagement with Wanru. And you, Mu Yaja." After saying that, he walked upstairs. He was infuriated. This rascal was clearly going to fight him to the end. For a lowly actress in the entertainment industry, he actually ignored his orders. Shocked and furious, he threw the cane in his hand at Mu Yaja's back. "Pa!" A slap sounded. The agarwood cane fell heavily on his back. Mu Yaja paused and slowly turned around. His eyes were filled with arrogance and coldness as he looked at Mu Sheng. Mu Wanru was shocked to see this. She hurried forward to support the trembling Mu Sheng. Chapter 607. His majestic and powerful words reverberated in the spacious main hall. Even Mu Wanru could not help but be shocked. Grandpa Mu was actually threatening Mu Yaja with the inheritance of the Mu family's head? While Mu Wanru was shocked, she was also secretly pleased with herself. Grandpa Mu's love for her made her even more fearless. The corners of Mu Yaja's eyes narrowed when he heard this. Yes, how could he forget? When Grandpa Mu announced this marriage, he also announced that he would be the successor of the Mu family's head. How could he forget that the reason he was able to obtain the right of inheritance was not because of how outstanding he was? It was completely established on this engagement. The only reason he agreed to this marriage was because Grandpa Mu had openly promised him that if he were to get married to Mu Wanru, he would give him the inheritance of the Mu family's head. Needless to say, this was very tempting to him. The Mu clan was a big clan, but its internal affairs were complicated. There were too many interests involved. It would not be an exaggeration to describe the Mu family as a royal family in ancient times. Putting aside the Mu family's side branches and his illegitimate children, the old man had 3 wives. These 3 wives were very capable and gave birth to 5 sons and 3 daughters for him. At that time, among the 5 sons, the old man was most satisfied with Mu Lianjue, who was from the 3rd wife. Be it in terms of means, ability, or charisma, Mu Lianjue was the most outstanding among the 5 sons, and the most promising candidate to inherit the Mu family's head. Alas, the old man was very particular about the distinction between the legitimate son and the concubine. No matter how outstanding Mu Lianjue was and how much he admired him, he was still a concubine's son. He felt that a concubine's son would not be able to enter the Hall of Elegance. Since ancient times, there was no reason for a concubine's son to inherit the family's head. Mu Lianqing was the legitimate son. Although he was not as outstanding as Mu Lianjue in all aspects, he was still a candidate for the family's head due to his status as a legitimate son. It was just that this Mu Lianqing was about to take over the Mu clan's authority, but he passed away at such a young age. As a result, the position of the Mu clan's patriarch had always been empty. As for the Mu group's authority, it had always been in Mu Sheng's hands. However, he was getting on in years, and he had yet to choose a successor, which inevitably caused internal strife within the family. In ancient times, there was a 9 dragons competition for the throne. At that time, Emperor Kangxi had 24 sons, and 9 of them participated in the competition for the throne. Looking at the rich and powerful families, in order to fight for the position of patriarch and become the master of the family, there were many cases where brothers in the family turned against each other and killed each other. That was because he was anxious to select a successor to be the Mu family's head, so as to stabilize the family's internal affairs and prevent unnecessary turmoil. Mu Sheng had been looking for the next family head, and Mu Yaja was the one he was most satisfied with. Even though Mu Yaja was only 14 at that time, he had already won Mu Sheng's admiration. He felt that among the many young people, Mu Yaja's ability was incomparably eye-catching. At that time, the young Mu Yaja was also eager to obtain the right to be the Mu family's head so as to stabilize his position in the family. Mu Lianqing passed away early, leaving behind an orphan and a widow. Mu Yaja was only 14 years old, but he was already well-versed in the rich and powerful families. If he did not have authority, he would only be bullied without being able to retaliate. Chapter 608. Hence, Mu Yaja silently agreed to this marriage. Hence, he became the sole successor of the Mu family. He entered the Mu group at the age of 18. Ever since he took over the reins of the Mu group at the age of 20, and took over the position as Dishing Financial Group CEO, 9 years of hardships had entrenched his power. The huge Dishing Group was now completely under his control. If he were to leave, the huge Mu Group would probably collapse overnight. Without him, Dishing would only become a wasteland. Now Mu Sheng was actually threatening him with the inheritance rights? What a joke. Did Mu Sheng really think that he would care about the Mu family's inheritance rights now? He was no longer the Mu Yaja of 15 years ago. He turned around and fixed his gaze on Mu Sheng. His eyes were bone-chilling and cold. Just as Mu Sheng thought that he would compromise and retract his rebellious words, he heard Mu Yaja's lips curl up expressionlessly. Arrogant and cold words escaped from his lips. You can give the Mu family's inheritance rights to whoever you want. Mu Sheng's face darkened when he heard this. What did you say? I've made myself very clear. Mu Yaja smiled. His tone was laced with mockery. Grandpa is indeed getting old. I'm afraid that my ears are not working well anymore. Unfilial son. You've really grown up. Mu Sheng was infuriated by his son's words. He clutched his chest tightly as anger surged in his chest. Are you really going to give up your inheritance rights for a despicable woman? Are you really going to give up everything for her, even if it means giving up your inheritance rights and losing everything? Mu Yaja sneered, dismissing his ridiculous words. The Mu group will lose everything if it loses me. Mu Sheng's murky eyes narrowed dangerously. This lad is really arrogant. Mu Sheng narrowed his eyes. He had always known his grandson's character. He was incomparably arrogant and would never take any threat seriously. However, in the end he was still too young, too arrogant, and even somewhat ignorant of the immensity of heaven and earth. Did he really think that the huge Mu group would become a pile of loose sand without him? Clearly, the old man did not buy it. However, the old man was still shocked by Mu Yaja's arrogant words. This kid at such a young age had far more courage than he had in the past. Unknowingly, he had already become a figure that could not be underestimated. The younger generation would surpass the older. Even if he didn't believe it, he still had to carefully weigh how much power this kid had. Mu Sheng's face darkened. He was not serious with his earlier words, and did not intend to remove him from the family head's position. He was merely trying to scare the lad, but he did not expect the latter to be so insolent and lose his confidence instead. Mu Yaja suddenly said in a deep voice, "Also, Grandpa, please be clear that she's not a despicable woman. She's the woman that I, Mu Yaja, have set my eyes on." After a pause, his cold and mocking gaze landed on Mu Wanru, who had a complicated expression on her face. He coldly retorted, "Compared to her, Grandpa, you want me to marry a woman of unknown origin. Don't you think this is the most ridiculous thing? Chapter 609. Isn't that the case? Grandpa, are you so sure that this woman is the one you're looking for? Muyaja's face instantly turned cold. His gaze landed on Mu Wanru's pale face, and his lips curled into a mocking smile. Take a closer look at her. How is she similar to the woman you're longing for? Mu Wanru's heart sank as she looked at Muyaja's cold expression. She had always been good at reading people's expressions. With just one look, she knew that this man had lost his patience with her. Hearing this, Musheng followed Muyaja's gaze to Mu Wanru's face. His gaze was probing and scrutinizing. The blatant suspicion in his eyes made Mu Wanru's face turn pale. She subconsciously took a step back in fright. Clutching her clothes, she called out weakly and helplessly, "Grandpa!" Her innocent and pitiful eyes brought him back to his senses. He immediately denied it. Impossible. She's Qingqing's daughter. She had done 2 consecutive paternity tests, and the results proved that she was Mu Qingqing's daughter. So what if her features were not similar? This did not constitute evidence. Muyaja sneered. Just as he was about to speak, Mu Wanru gently interrupted him. "Grandpa!" She pursed her lips and walked to him with a lonely and helpless expression. Holding his hand, she said sadly, "Since he wants to cancel the engagement with me, how can I force him? He doesn't have me in his heart, so it's fine to cancel the engagement. Anyway, I only want to be by Grandpa's side for the rest of my life. Grandpa, please don't chase me away. I can't bear to part with Grandpa. I only want to be by your side. It's just that." Halfway through her words, she lowered her eyelashes in incomparable sadness. Her hands slowly moved to her flat lower abdomen, and her lips couldn't help but tremble slightly in sadness. When Musheng saw this, he thought that she was upset over Muyaja's annulment. He felt guilty and heartache at the same time. Just as his hand touched the back of her hand, 2 streams of tears rolled down her cheeks and dripped onto the withered back of his hand, wetting it. "What's wrong?" he asked in a panic. "Grandpa, what should I do? What about the baby in my belly?" Mu Wanru suddenly gritted her teeth and made up her mind. Then, she pretended to break down and cried bitterly. "What should I do with my child?" Musheng was taken aback, and a puzzled look surfaced on his face. What's with the child she was talking about? Muyaja narrowed his eyes. His deep gaze followed Mu Wanru's movements and landed on her flat stomach. For a moment, he didn't know what this woman was up to. Mu Wanru was in agony. Tears streamed down her face and her throat was choked with sobs. She said in a trembling voice, "Grandpa, I only just found out about it. I didn't dare to believe it at first. But after checking, I found out that I only found out about the good news today. I wanted to tell you today, but..." Mu Wanru suddenly raised her tear-stained face and looked sadly at Muyaja. Her eyes were filled with disappointment and heartbreak. "Aja doesn't want me anymore. It's fine if he doesn't want me anymore. But does he not want the child in my belly too?" With a boom, Musheng's mind went blank as if a white light had exploded. She was pregnant. Could it be that she was pregnant with Muyaja's child? Muyaja's eyes widened at her words, and his face turned cold. Chapter 610. Could it be that she was pregnant with Muyaja's child? Musheng immediately grasped Mu Wanru's wrist tightly as he looked at Muyaja in shock and suspicion. Wasn't this child congenitally infertile? Why was she now saying that she was pregnant with his child? Muyaja was stunned when he heard this. His eyes widened slightly as his face turned cold. What trick was this woman playing with him? Pregnant? He didn't remember ever laying a finger on her. Hence, he said in disgust, "Mu Wanru, don't put on airs." "I'm not." She held his hand tightly and clarified nervously and fearfully. "Grandpa, I only found out about it today too. I originally wanted to tell you all this good news, but I didn't expect it to happen. But Aja said that he wants to call off the engagement with me, so this good news became bad news. But I'm really pregnant." Muyaja finally saw how shameless this woman could be. He suddenly recalled that when he was having sex with that little woman last night, she suddenly lost control and questioned him. "You said that I belong to you. So who do you belong to? Mu Wanru?" Could it be, when he was not in the country, Mu Wanru came to show off in front of her and claimed that she was pregnant with his child to humiliate her? Obviously she believed it. Was that why she had blacklisted his number and treated him so coldly, as if he hadn't seen him at all? She even asked him not to touch her out of humiliation. She even despised him for being dirty, just because she believed Mu Wanru's words? Mu Yaja instantly figured out the ins and outs of the matter, but he still felt a little annoyed. This stupid woman believed everything she heard. Was her trust in him so weak? She really needed to be taught a lesson. However, Mu Yaja did not expect Mu Wanru to jump into the fire pit herself. Or was her bluff just a delaying tactic? If that was the case, then Mu Wanru's scheming was deeper and harder to predict than he thought. He had not touched her at all. Yet she dared to announce that she was pregnant with his child. Was she not afraid that he would do a paternity test after the child was born? Or Mu Yaja's handsome eyes widened, and they turned cold in an instant. Or did she not intend to keep the child at all? On the other hand, Mu Sheng's heart ached so much that it was about to bleed when he saw Mu Wanru's weak and helpless look. He immediately comforted her. Ro, don't be anxious. Grandpa believes you. Grandpa believes you. Come and sit down. With that, he coaxed and cajoled Mu Wanru to sit on the sofa beside him. After a moment of shock, his face lit up with joy. Ro, what nonsense are you spouting? It's a good thing that you're pregnant. It's a great thing. Don't worry. With that, he patted Mu Wanru's back and turned to face Mu Yaja angrily. How can you say that? Ro is pregnant with your child. Isn't this great thing? What do you mean by pretentious? What are you talking about? You don't even have the basic responsibility of a man. Outrageous. Mu Yaja frowned slightly and coldly said, Grandpa, I didn't touch her. Even if she's pregnant, it's not my child. Chapter 611. This is outrageous. It wasn't easy for you to have a child. This is a good thing. How can you abort it? Mu Xing was furious as he accused him. You unfilial son. Don't you even acknowledge your own child? Wanru has been helping you wholeheartedly, but what about you? You don't even acknowledge your own child. She's pregnant. If the child isn't yours, whose can it be? Mu Wanru had always maintained a virtuous image in front of Mu Sheng. Naturally, he believed her words without a doubt. Instead, he thought that this unfilial son of his was irresponsible and did not even acknowledge his own child. But he's the child's father. Why won't he acknowledge his own child? Mu Wanru looked at Mu Xing sadly. Tears streamed down her face as her voice trembled and choked. Her whole body trembled. Seeing this, Mu Sheng's heart ached even more. He immediately pulled her into his arms and comforted her gently. Don't cry, child. You've been wronged. Don't be afraid. Grandpa is here to stand up for you. You just have to focus on recuperating. Don't worry about anything else. Grandpa. Mu Wanru threw herself into his arms with a wronged look and cried sadly. Hearing her cries, Mu Sheng's heart seemed to be cut with a bloody wound, and it hurt sharply. Mu Yaja raised a brow slightly, his lips pursed and stiff. This woman's acting skills are superb. Those best actresses in the entertainment industry can't even compare to half of her acting skills. If not for his sense of propriety, he would have been deceived by her innocent face and suspected whose child the child in her stomach belonged to. Regarding this, he did not intend to explain further. In this situation, Mu Xing only believed Mu Wanru's side of the story. No matter how he explained, he would not be able to defend himself. On the other side, Mu Sheng's heart ached as he covered the back of Mu Wanru's hand and comforted her. Roa, don't be sad. If he doesn't acknowledge this child, Grandpa will. Sai, you have to think about yourself. You're pregnant now, don't cry. Mu Wanru's bluff was done out of desperation. She had no choice but to resort to it. In order to protect his identity from being exposed, he did not hesitate to take the risk. She was keenly aware that Mu Yaja must have seen through her identity, but she didn't know when he realized it. Let's not talk about this for now. Seeing that her identity was about to be exposed, Mu Wanru had no choice but to reveal the fact that she was pregnant. Since Mu Yaja was aware of her identity, she could only use his trust in her to claim that she was pregnant with Mu Yaja's child. Mu Xing would definitely be overjoyed and believe her words. He would then arrange her marriage with Mu Yaja as soon as possible. Once the wedding was completed, she would officially become the young madam of the Mu family. Then, everything would be much easier to handle. She was not afraid of Mu Yaja's denial. Compared to him, Mu Xing would definitely believe her words more. Even if they had to do a DNA test, Mu Wanru would not be afraid or guilty. Previously, she had seriously calculated the time of her pregnancy. It had only been 5 weeks since she had sex with Aaron. That was during her safe period, so it was impossible for her to have conceived at that time. Hence, according to the world's judgment, she estimated that she was about 3.5 weeks pregnant. Chapter 6:12. A paternity test was not something he could do just because he wanted to. Even if he insisted on having her undergo an amniocentesis, Mu Xing would not agree to it. This was because the amniocentesis needed to be done under mature conditions. If it was done too early, there was a high risk of miscarriage. Usually, amniocentesis could only be done after 3 months of pregnancy. Mu Xing had always valued the Mu family's bloodline, so naturally he would not allow it so easily. With his protection, she could ensure her safety for at least 2 months. This meant that she still had 2 months. 2 months later, she had plenty of ways to let nature take its course for her miscarriage. By then, as long as she acted quickly, Mu Yaja would be helpless even if he wanted to prove that the child was not his. It was as she had expected. Mu Yaja stood on the escalator and watched this farce from above. She heard him say coldly, "Won't the truth be out if the child is mine after a paternity test?" Mu Wanru raised her head and said righteously, "Fine. I'll do it with you. If you want to do a paternity test with me, then I'll do it with you. This way, I can prove my innocence." She met his cold gaze without a trace of guilt or panic on her face. To a certain extent, this was undoubtedly a provocation. Mu Yaja's eyes darkened, but he heard Mu Xing cut her off sternly. No, the third madam had undergone an amniocentesis before, so he knew very well that it was quite dangerous for the fetus and could easily lead to a miscarriage. He slammed the table and stood up, scolding Mu Yaja. "This is outrageous. Can the child still be saved if we do an amniocentesis now? Are you crazy? Grandpa, I'm fine. Since he wants to verify if the child in my womb is his, then let him verify it. I have a clear conscience, anyway," Mu Wanru immediately said from the side. Mu Xing said helplessly, "Silly Ro-air, you don't understand at all. You're just pregnant. How can you do an amniocentesis? I'm afraid it'll be difficult to keep the child." Mu Wanru pretended to be angry and mumbled, "It's fine if you don't want it. Anyway, he doesn't recognize this child. If the child is born and knows that his biological father doesn't recognize him, he will be very sad. Don't lower yourself to his level. Anyway, Grandpa won't allow you to do it. Just focus on taking care of the fetus and don't worry about the rest," he coaxed at once. Mu Wanru wiped the tears from the corner of her eyes with a square handkerchief. Her head hung low, but at an angle where the old man could not see. Her lips curled into a sinister smile. Mu Yaja did not miss the sinister smirk on her face. The man frowned, but then he thought of something and his thin lips suddenly curled up coldly. He seemed to know who this child belonged to. He had to admit that this woman was very thoughtful. She was meticulous in everything, no matter how big or small. She didn't leave out any clues. Presumably, this was just her stalling tactic. After these 3 months, she would definitely quietly create an accident, so that the child in her belly would naturally be aborted. Wouldn't she? But this woman was still too naive. He had long expected this. 6 years ago, when they got engaged, Mu Xing urged him to get married as soon as possible. The old man did not want to delay their wedding too much. He wholeheartedly hoped that the two would get married and have children as soon as possible, so that the Mu family could flourish. Chapter 6:13. Alas, Mu Wanru was merely a pawn he used in exchange for the inheritance of the Mu family. He could get engaged to her, and he did not mind getting married to her. Impossible. Hence, he fabricated the news of her being infertile. Everyone believed it to be the truth. When Mu Sheng learned of Mu Wanru's infertility, he, who had always valued his family line, was somewhat hesitant. The marriage was delayed again and again because of this. Mu Wanru also believed it to be true and thought that she was infertile. Unbeknownst to her, she was merely a pawn in the man's game of chess from the start. Moreover, he already had evidence of her cheating on him. be it the audio tape or the CCTV footage. How could the evidence in his hands not prove her innocence? This woman was too naive. Playing such a clumsy game with him was truly laughable. Was she really so naive to think that he would not be able to produce evidence of her cheating other than an amniocentesis and a paternity test? Wuxia smiled. Grandpa, if you find out one day that the child in her stomach is not mine, what will you do? Mu Sheng's heart skipped a beat as he looked at him. Then his doubtful gaze landed on Mu Wanru. Hearing this, the latter shook her head innocently and said timidly, Grandpa, you must believe me. If it's possible, I can do a paternity test now. He can deny the child in my stomach, but he can't belittle my innocence like this. Mu Sheng hurriedly said, Wanru, Grandpa believes you. When the child in your stomach is 5 months old, we can do a paternity test to prove your innocence. All right, I'll produce evidence to prove your innocence. Mu Yaja's face was calm, and his eyes were cold. He then turned around and went upstairs expressionlessly. His cold voice made Mu Wanru's bones tremble uncontrollably. This man seemed to be scarier than she had imagined. What other tricks did he have up his sleeve that she didn't know about? Mu Wanru couldn't help but feel a little flustered. She didn't know if he really had some secret evidence in his hands. She was very careful, so she shouldn't have left any traces behind. He shouldn't be caught red-handed. However, Mu Yaja's eyes flashed with disdain and fierceness, as if he really had something that could be used against her. She couldn't suppress the panic in her heart. She couldn't help but feel that this man must have evidence of her in his hands. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so calm as if victory was within his grasp. Ever since she said that she was pregnant, his face had never revealed a look of surprise. It was as if he had expected this. Could it be that he knew she could get pregnant? Thinking of this possibility, Mu Wanru couldn't help but break out in cold sweat. Regarding her diagnosis of infertility 6 years ago, there were still a lot of doubts. It was very strange. She had never believed that it was impossible for her to conceive. Could it be that this man was the one behind this matter? Thinking of this, Mu Wanru instantly broke out in cold sweat. Her lips trembled uncontrollably from immense fear. Mu Sheng touched her hand and felt that her fingertips were extremely cold. He looked up and saw the cold sweat rolling down her face. The fear in her eyes could no longer be concealed, and was on the verge of bursting out. Chapter 6:14. Mu Wanru held his hands, intending to add fuel to the fire. Grandpa, I'm scared. I'm really scared. You have to believe me. If the child in my stomach isn't his, who else can it be? Didn't he accuse me of having an affair with another man? How can I do that? Grandpa, you have to believe me. I won't do anything to let him, you, or the Mu family down. Am I right? The old man nodded his head repeatedly, clearly believing her words. I believe you. How can my rower do such a thing? Grandpa believes you. But he really wants to do a paternity test with me. Grandpa, it's not that I don't dare to do it. It's just that I can't bear to part with this child. If the child in my stomach gets hurt, I really don't know if I can still have a child in this lifetime. Mu Wanru's tearful and pitiful look made his heart ache even more. He kept consoling her. Good girl. Don't worry. Grandpa is here. No one is allowed to touch a strand of your hair. I won't allow anyone to harm the Mu family's bloodline. Don't be sad. Even if he doesn't acknowledge this child, Grandpa will. Mu Wanru was overjoyed, but her face revealed an aggrieved and touched expression. She threw herself into his arms and cried, Yes, Grandpa loves Rower the most. Nestled in his arms, Mu Wanru could not stop sobbing sadly. Her face was filled with panic and fear. Songqingling Kindergarten. At the school gate, children were being led by the teachers to the school bus hand in hand. Yin Tianyu stood at the school gate and sent a message to Li Hanlin. When he raised his head, he was surrounded by a group of innocent and adorable Lolas. They were like stars surrounding the moon. He was used to seeing this though. Yin Tianyu's face darkened slightly. His beautiful, jet-black hair fell softly to his ears, and his pair of eyes were especially bright and beautiful. A little girl reached out to tug at the corner of his shirt in an attempt to say a few words to him. Just a word would do. Yin Tianyu gently turned his body away, seemingly repulsed by her intimacy. The little girl, however, did not seem to mind at all. Instead, she smiled contentedly at him and asked, Yu, where are your parents? Do you always go home alone? Yin Tianyu expressionlessly turned his head away, not wanting to bother with her. However, the naive child mistakenly thought that he was a little disappointed. Her expression was a little pitiful as she grabbed his sleeve and said, Yu, I can accompany you. He expressionlessly took out his phone and looked at the time. So slow. Did Li Hanlin's car break down on the road? The little fangirls behind him were still chattering around him. He couldn't help but have a dull headache. Thus he turned to look at the innocent little girl and ordered her to leave. Don't stand beside me. How annoying. He had already been tortured by them for an entire day. They couldn't even spare him after school. A bunch of kids who couldn't even count on their fingers when it came to addition and subtraction. How could they communicate with each other when their IQs were not even on the same channel? Yu was the little Prince Charming in the kindergarten. Not only the little girls, but even the teachers from other classes would often run to the classroom door and look at him through the window as if they were fangirls. Aya, so cute. If I can have such a cute baby, I'll be so happy. Chapter 6:15. TSK, how annoying. It was like a rare animal being watched all day long. It was really annoying. What was it about his mommy saving the universe in her past life? His mommy was the woman he loved the most in the world. Even if his mommy was not a Superman who saved the world in her past life, she was still the one he loved the most. Just as the pitiful little munchkin was being pestered by a bunch of fangirls, a hero finally came to save him on a rainbow cloud. A flashy Bugatti Veyron sports car stopped at the school gate. When Li Hanlin got out of the car, the cool sports car instantly attracted a round of exclamations from the passers-by. Oh God! Bugatti Veyron. This is a limited edition sports car. It's very expensive. I've seen it in a magazine. This sports car is worth tens of millions. Oh God. This is my first time seeing a real car. The flashy luxury car attracted the attention of the passers-by. Many of them took out their phones to take short videos and post them to their friends. Some of them had only seen sports cars in magazines and had never seen Li Hanlin's limited edition sports car, which cost tens of millions, which was flown over from the supercar kingdom. Yin Tianyu's lips twitched. He was speechless as he looked at the passers-by who were touching the car and posing for selfies from time to time. Spotting the little lad's figure in the crowd, Li Hanlin immediately walked over to him in a fawning manner. Director Yin, I'm late. Yin Tianyu glared at him in displeasure. Just as he was about to flare up, Li Hanlin, who seemed to know what he was going to say next, hurriedly kowtowed to him and begged for mercy. Please don't deduct my salary. Director Yin, it's really hard to save money for a wife. Yu. Li Hanlin blinked his eyes and gave him a flattering smile. Yin Tianyu felt disgusted. Enough. Give me a reason for being late, or else your bonus will be deducted. Yes. I really have a reason for being late. Li Hanlin immediately defended himself. Speak. I found out something today. Let me carry you to the car first, and then I'll tell you slowly. With that, Li Hanlin bent over and carried him into the car. There was a child safety seat in the front passenger seat specially prepared for him. This thing is so childish. I'm not a child. I don't want to sit on it. Feeling wronged, Li Hanlin said, CEO Yin, there's nothing you can do if you don't want to. It's for your safety. Moreover, the country's law stipulates that children under the age of 8 must sit in the safety seat. Yin Tianyu's face was full of bitterness. That's right, he's not even 8 years old. In the car, Li Hanlin passed a stack of documents to him. Yin Tianyu took the documents and skimmed through them. His brows furrowed slightly. You sent someone to tail Muwanru? Yes. We'll be on guard 24/7. You've done well. Yin Tianyu gave him a rare compliment as his lips curled into a smile. You'll get a raise this month. Li Hanlin immediately cheered. Long live President Yun. Yin Tianyu lowered his head and flipped through a few more documents. His gaze suddenly landed on a pregnancy diagnosis report. He scanned it carefully and was startled. This woman is pregnant. Yes. How can that be? Yin Tianyu asked suspiciously. Isn't she congenitally infertile? I'm not sure about that. Li Hanlin paused for a moment, and then sorted out the matter in detail. Mu Wanru purposely chose an unknown private hospital and bribed a gynecologist to do a pregnancy test to deceive others. Chapter 616. Pregnant. Yin Tianyu stared fixedly at the report. His gaze was as sharp as a sword, as if he wanted to pierce through the paper. How could this woman be pregnant? Didn't they say that she was congenitally unable to conceive? Why was there such a pregnancy diagnosis now? What a joke. Yin Tianyu doubtfully reread the diagnosis report several times to make sure that he was not mistaken. Is this news reliable? It's reliable. This woman is really pregnant. Li Hanlin patiently explained while observing his expression. Who was the father of the child in her belly? Was it Muyaja's? D***. Yin Tianyu crumpled the pregnancy diagnosis report into a ball. His beautiful eyes were burning with indignation. He had clearly laid his cards on the table. Since he wanted to woo his mother and be his daddy, he had to get rid of all the women around him. This was his bottom line, his principle, and his mother's bottom line. It was not to be violated. What did he say to him back then? He said that he would handle it well. In the end, he got such a diagnosis report. Yin Tianyu's face was cold and tense. His pink lips formed a stiff arc as he frowned. Didn't I tell him to get rid of all the women around him? If mommy finds out about this, she'll be heartbroken. He lowered his head to look at the crumpled report in his hand. Suddenly thinking of something, he frowned and asked, "You're saying that she went to a private hospital for a pregnancy test to cover up her pregnancy?" Yes. Li Hanlin nodded. The Mu Group controls 90% of the medical centers in the capital, so the files of the medical centers are kept in the system. This private hospital is located in a small town on the outskirts of the city, so the medical system is not connected to the internet. When she went out, she was dressed in a very simple and low-key manner. She even wore sunglasses and a mask. Hearing this, Yin Tianyu's fingertips lightly tapped on his knees, as if he were analyzing something. He got a conclusion from Li Hanlin's words. Yin Tianyu suddenly said in a low voice, "Hearing what you said, I suspect that the child in her stomach is not my daddy's." His words came to an abrupt halt. Yin Tianyu was stunned. He had unconsciously called that man my daddy. Yin Tianyu pursed his lips, cleared his throat awkwardly, and corrected himself. "I suspect that the child in her stomach isn't Muyaja's." Li Hanlin was puzzled. "What do you mean?" "If the child in her stomach is Muyaja's, then it will undoubtedly be a great surprise to her. The Mu family is the richest family in the capital, and they attach great importance to their descendants. If she is pregnant with Muyaja's flesh and blood, the mother's status will rise because of the child. With a son and a daughter by her side, her position will be even more stable." Pausing for a moment, he suddenly narrowed his eyes dangerously. "But you said that she deliberately chose a private hospital, and even bribed the doctor to secretly do a pregnancy test in order to hide her pregnancy from the public. It was as if her pregnancy was something that couldn't be exposed. Don't you think it's strange?" After his detailed analysis, Li Hanlin instantly saw through the trick. "Director Yin, are you saying that Mu Wanru's child isn't Muyaja's?" Chapter 617. Yin Tianyu even managed to deduce something from this incident. Muyaja had never laid a finger on Mu Wanru. Yin Tianyu's heart was instantly satisfied. If Muyaja really gave him a half-brother or sister, he would not acknowledge it. Li Hanlin could not help but raise his eyebrows in amazement at Yin Tianyu's wit and intelligence. "Director Yin, if you didn't mention it, I would have thought that your daddy had impregnated her." Yu glanced at him contemptuously and mocked him mercilessly. "Agent Li, do you think I'm like you? Do you have a low IQ?" Li Hanlin felt aggrieved by Yu's contemptuous gaze. Did he have to be so black-bellied? Did he have to be so sharp-tongued? He even mocked him for having a low IQ. Li Hanlin's face was filled with grief and indignation. "I'm bitter inside, but I won't say it out loud. If I say it out loud, my bonus will be deducted." Li Hanlin pursed his lips in puzzlement. Since the child in Mu Wanru's stomach isn't Muyaja's, then whose is it? "It's definitely not yours," Yin Tianyu replied abruptly. Li Hanlin was at a loss for words. "I know it's definitely not mine." "That's an interesting question." Yu gave him a sidelong glance expressionlessly. You're asking me whose child it is. How would I know? Do you think I'm a god? Li Hanlin clapped his hands in glee. It seemed that this child was not a god. He did not know everything after all. This time, it was his turn to be satisfied. Director Yin, your mommy is filming. Don't you need to visit her? Li Hanlin suddenly asked. No need. My mommy's scenes are all night scenes. It must be tough on her. When she's done with the night scenes, I'll definitely nourish her well. As Yu spoke, he started to organize a diet in his mind. He planned to nourish Yin Shishir's body with more food when she returned home. Li Hanlin was so envious that he was about to die. Aya, why didn't he have such a filial son? Well, he didn't even have a wife. In the future, when she had children, she must use Yin Tianyu as a benchmark. She would educate her children on the path of 24 filial piety from a young age, and raise them into a smart and filial son like Yin Tianyu. Boss, based on the analysis from multiple angles, Miss Yin is jealous of you. In the CEO's office of Dishing Financial Group, Minyu raised his head from the thick stack of psychology books on his desk. He adjusted his glasses and spoke seriously. Mu Yaja leaned back in his office chair with a thoughtful look on his face. Then he stared at him suspiciously. Really? Probably. Minyu immediately explained. That's what the book says. Read it out, I want to hear it. Mu Yaja immediately ordered. Minyu nodded his head and said, no matter if it's a man or a woman, when they see their partner interacting with someone of the opposite sex, they will always feel uncomfortable. In psychology, it's called jealousy. Continue. Mu Yaja nodded and ordered him to continue reading. Chapter 618. He needs constant proof of his love. The thought of a possible love rival will arouse strong suspicion and accusations from him, a selfish person. This kind of baseless attack will make him feel wronged and tired at first. Later on, it will become an insult and unbearable. Mu Yaja was stunned. Why did Minyu's behavior and symptoms seem to be more similar to his? Could it be that when he saw Gu Xingzi kissing her that day, he flew into a rage because he was jealous? But when he saw his woman with another woman, shouldn't it be natural for him to be angry? Mu Yaja suddenly leaned forward slightly and clasped his hands together. He frowned and said, Minyu. Yes, boss. Mu Yaja asked hesitantly. Is it normal for a man to be jealous of a woman? Minyu was taken aback. He immediately lowered his head and flipped through the pages of the book with his fingers. Mu Yaja was shocked by the speed of his hands. Minyu immediately flipped to the table of contents and read it to him with great emotion. Love without jealousy doesn't exist. Vinegar is not just a condiment in love. It's even a nutrient. The intensity of the vinegar is often proportional to the intensity of the love. So looking back at the past and thinking about the present, if you're never jealous in a relationship, isn't this so-called love very suspicious? Practice is the only standard to test the truth. Jealousy is one of the standards to test whether true love is fake. In other words, when a person is jealous of another person, it's because he loves her and cares about her? Mu Yaja organized the paragraph into a sentence of truth. Minyu nodded hesitantly and said, that's roughly what it means. Mu Yaja frowned. He lowered his eyes and seemed to be deep in thought. Suddenly, he raised his eyes and looked at Minyu in confusion. The latter's shoulders trembled as he stared at her. Minyu? Go ahead, boss. Have you ever been in love? No. Minyu was touched on his sore spot. He immediately shook his head pitifully. You've never been in love before? Mu Yaja glanced at him from head to toe with some disdain. He actually hired someone who had never been in a relationship to be his love psychology teacher. Minyu retorted, Boss, I haven't even earned enough money to get married. How would I dare to fall in love? Mu Yaja raised his eyebrows in displeasure and glared at him coldly. He rapped his knuckles on the table. If you want a raise, just say it. Minyu replied honestly, Boss, I want a raise. Mu Yaja ignored him. Rejected. Minyu looked as if he had nothing to live for. Mu Yaja ignored the resentment emanating from him and continued to ask, what does it mean for a woman to be jealous of a man? Unwillingly, Minyu lowered his head and flipped through the book. Then he read it out one by one. When a woman is jealous, she will ignore you. Mu Yaja nodded. Just a few days after he left the country, This woman had blacklisted his number. Secondly, she will be cold to you. Muyaja nodded again. This woman was really damn cold to him. She gave him the cold shoulder. Could it be that she was jealous of him? Thirdly, she will lose her temper easily. 90% of women will lose their temper. Chapter 619. The fourth rule is that you will mock and ridicule without revealing your true feelings. That seemed to be the case. She'll compare herself to that woman. Muyaja rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Yin Shishir's words echoed in his ears again. You said that every part of my body belongs to you. What about you? Who do you belong to? Muwanru? She'll appeared depressed, accompanied by sad crying, and unable to recover from the setback. Minyu listed out the reactions of women to jealousy one by one. Even if he didn't list all of them, most of them matched. Could it be that the woman had blacklisted him, treated him coldly and alienated him, secretly mocked and ridiculed him, and even compared him to other women? These were all reactions of jealousy. Muyaja naturally put it into the equation. Jealousy equals love. Did that mean that this woman was jealous because she liked him? Muyaja couldn't help but smile at this realization. The coldness in his eyes gradually eased, and there was a hint of joy. Minyu raised his head and looked at the excitement and complacency on his boss's face in shock. Under his gaze, Muyaja came back to his senses. However, when he saw Minyu staring at him so blatantly, he immediately stopped smiling, cleared his throat, and glared at Minyu unhappily. Continue reading your book. Minyu immediately calmed down and didn't dare to look at him again. You have to be good at controlling your emotions and respecting the other party's feelings. You have to know that she's not your private property. She's my private property. Muyaja corrected him unhappily. She has the right to be with others, and even to love others. Muyaja immediately interrupted him with a cold look in his eyes. She has no right to be with men other than me, and she has no right to love other men. The strong and dangerous aura emanating from him shocked Minyu so much that he didn't dare to speak for a long time. Minyu. Boss, is this book authentic? Muyaja questioned. How can there be such a ridiculous statement? Yeah. Minyu flipped to the next page and added. It also says that although being jealous is a sign of liking someone, it's still far from true love. If you're jealous, there's only one way out. To use love to get love back. Using love to obtain love? Muyaja couldn't help but fall into deep thought as he leaned back in his chair with an unreadable expression on his face. Do women have a deep obsession with marriage? What do women usually think about marriage? Minyu shook his head blankly. I don't know. He also wanted to answer this question. It was a pity that he didn't even have a girlfriend. Muyaja glared at him. If you don't know, then why aren't you investigating? Minyu immediately took out a book titled, The Psychology of Marriage, and started reading it silently. It's easy to fall in love, but it's hard to get along with each other. The biggest difference between marriage and love is that love is based on the other party's strengths, while marriage is based on the other party's weaknesses. In marriage and love, communication is often a big problem, and this is often caused by the difference in perception of love between men and women. Muyaja nodded thoughtfully. Chapter 620. Is that so? Muyaja mumbled doubtfully. Minyu replied, well, a woman's heart is like a needle at the bottom of the ocean. I don't really understand. Muyaja replied, marriage is just a piece of paper. Do women actually see it as a sense of security? He really couldn't understand what women were thinking. Muyaja was a little confused. Can't you get a divorce after you get married? Minyu thought about it seriously for a while and said, I think that women yearn for marriage not only because of the sense of security that a piece of paper can give them, but also because they yearn for their man's love to become a legitimate thing. Muyaja gently rubbed the thumb ring on his finger. His eyes were filled with thoughts, but he didn't say anything. Boss, do you not know how to coax a woman? Minyu winked slyly. Let me give you a suggestion. Let's hear it. Minyu immediately leaned over and whispered in his ear. Muyaja looked at him suspiciously. Will it work? Yes. It will definitely work. Women like romantic things. Muyaja glanced at him and pursed his lips. Go and arrange it. Okay. Yinshanshi Villa District. Yin Shirshir locked herself in her bedroom. She couldn't go anywhere for an entire day. She wanted to go home, but a servant stopped her at the door. Yin Shanshiri Villa was located in a piece of land with good feng shui in the suburbs. It was far away from the hustle and bustle of the world. The scenery was picturesque and beautiful. When she walked out of the entrance, she could see a winding mountain road in the distance. It stretched for thousands of miles. Because it was a private villa area, there were basically no public transport routes or taxis. If she insisted on leaving, she would have to walk down the mountain to have a chance of getting a taxi. Yin Shirshir was extremely frustrated. Muyaja. What was this man thinking? Why did he leave her alone in the villa and disappear without a trace? What was he doing? In the afternoon, Yu called to ask if the filming was going well. Of course, Yin Shirshir couldn't tell her that she wasn't on set anymore. Originally, she was supposed to have a scene today, but after Muyaja's nonsense last night, she didn't know what the crew would think of her. What did Lin Fengtian think of her? She tried to summon up the courage to call Lin Fengtian and apologize. Because of her personal reasons, she had affected the normal progress of the crew. She felt very guilty about it. Especially Muyaja, who had pushed Lin Fengtian to the ground so roughly. He must have been injured. Where's Gu Xingzi? He should be injured as well, right? He was afraid that because of this, the progress of the production could only be temporarily delayed. Thinking of this, Yin Shirshir felt guilty. In his heart, he hated Muyaja for being so unreasonable. In the evening, there was a knock on the bedroom door. Yin Shirshir covered herself with the blanket and didn't want to bother with it. The knocking continued for a long time. Suddenly, the butler's polite voice came from the door. "Miss Yin, are you asleep?" "I'm asleep," Yin Shirshir replied in annoyance. There was another silence outside the door. Then there was the soft sound of keys. Yin Shirshir was shocked. She immediately sat up from the bed, put on her slippers and walked to the door. However, the door that was originally locked was open from the outside. She couldn't help but feel a little angry. "Didn't I say that I was asleep?" Chapter 621. Yin Shirshir was startled. "You want to send me home?" "Yes." The butler explained. "The president just called and asked us to send you home." Yin Shirshir's face froze. She didn't know why, but when she found out that it was this man who asked the butler to send her home, she felt a little disappointed. However, it quickly dissipated. "He said he wanted to send me home?" "Yes." The butler said and carefully handed over a small dress. "The president sent someone to give this to you. If you don't mind, we'll help you change into it." "What is this?" Yin Shirshir's gaze fell on the small black dress. It was a Chanel haute couture dress. It was elegant and beautiful, and one could tell that it was worth a lot. It wasn't for formal banquets, but more like the small dresses worn by socialites in high society. It was simple, but it didn't lose its elegance. She couldn't help but frown. "I don't want it." She didn't want to wear the clothes he gave her. When the butler heard this, a panicked look appeared on his face. "Miss Yin, this is a little gift from the president. He repeatedly told us to help you change into it, otherwise. Miss Yin, please don't make it difficult for us." Yin Shirshir said in a huff. "I don't want it. Tell him I don't like it." "You don't like this style?" the butler asked respectfully. This was a style personally chosen by the president. When they saw it, they also felt that Yin Shirshir would look good in it. "I don't like this style," Yin Shirshir said coldly. "The president didn't just send this one. If Miss Yin doesn't like it, there are a few more styles for you to choose from." With that, the butler immediately called out and a row of fashion clerks in high-class uniforms rushed in. They spread out in front of her, each holding a set of high-class clothes of different styles for her to choose from. "Didn't you say you were going to send me home? Why did you make me change into this for a trial? Where's Muyaja? What is he trying to do?" Yin Shirshir couldn't help but feel annoyed. She didn't know what he was trying to do. Everyone looked at each other and shook their heads in confusion. "The president only told us to help you change into the dress and send you to the car. The car is already waiting for you outside." Upon hearing this, Yin Shirshir immediately walked to the floor-to-ceiling window and lifted the curtains. When she saw a luxurious limousine parked outside the courtyard, she was momentarily baffled. She really could not fathom the man's intention. However, she turned around and looked at the troubled faces behind her. She suddenly sighed and pointed at the black dress and said, "Forget it, I won't make things difficult for you. Just this one, I will change into it myself." The servant's face immediately lit up with joy. She left the dress in the room and retreated out of the door. Yin Shirshir changed into the gown and looked at the mirror. The black gown on her made her look even more elegant and slender. It also accentuated her snow-white skin. Her black hair, which was as beautiful as brocade, slanted from her shoulders to her waist. She exuded the aura of a socialite. As soon as she opened the door, the stylists waiting at the door immediately surrounded her. Hair, makeup, jewelry, and high heels were undoubtedly a huge project. Yin Shirshir felt that something was wrong. "What are you trying to do?" The stylists were also confused and shook their heads. Chapter 622. The Bentley slowly parked in the parking lot of Hushin Island. Hushin Island was artificially developed 2 years ago, and now it had become a landmark in the capital. And this restaurant was located on Hushin Island. It could be said to have a picturesque view. Bali Western Restaurant. It was the best Western restaurant for couples in the capital. It was very romantic. It was said that this Western restaurant only served one pair of couples a week. It was rumored that this was the most expensive restaurant in the capital. Whether it was the dishes or the fine wine, they were all extremely luxurious. Therefore, it was widely rumored that Bali's couple's set meal was worth tens of millions. Yin Shirshir initially found it unbelievable when she heard about it. How could anyone be stupid enough to spend 10 million on a Western meal? However, when she got out of the car, she was surprised to see a gorgeous cruise ship docked by the shore. It was so beautiful. It was already nighttime. The entire island was covered in colorful lights. It was extremely romantic. The night breeze blew a burst of floral fragrance. The flowers on the shore bloomed like a magnificent carpet. The sky was filled with bright stars. The lake was decorated with starlight and starlights. The scenery was breathtaking. Yin Shirshir couldn't help but be deeply attracted by the romantic scenery. She walked along the lakeside. The fragrance of flowers, the night view, and the starlights made her fall into a trance. When she came back to her senses, the car had already driven away. What did he mean? Why did he leave her here alone? Yin Shirshir's heart skipped a beat. Looking around, she saw a harbor not far away. The night view of Hushin Island was very beautiful. Not only that, there was also a port by the lake, equipped with a cruise ship. After boarding the cruise ship, one could travel around Hushin Island. However, the ticket price was not cheap, but it attracted many people. Therefore, there was a long line at the port. Many people were waiting to board the cruise ship to enjoy the beautiful night view. Yin Shirshir was obviously confused. She didn't know what Wuxia was doing. He let her wear such a gown and left her here alone. She didn't know how to get back to the city from here. She should be able to get a bus here, but she didn't have anything on her. She didn't bring her phone or wallet. He couldn't help but feel a little depressed. Seeing that there were people at the harbor, she thought to ask for directions and see if there was any way to return to the city. Thus, Yin Shirshir walked towards the harbor. Just now she was walking in a hurry and didn't pay attention. When she brushed past a woman, she accidentally knocked the woman's phone to the ground. Yin Shirshir was stunned. She quickly apologized and lowered her head to pick up the phone. The woman said impatiently, "What's wrong with you? Don't you need to watch where you're going? Seriously." Yin Shirshir frowned slightly, but she didn't want to argue with this passerby. She picked up her phone, but when she raised her head to look at the woman, she was slightly stunned. "It's her?" The woman she bumped into was none other than Song Inya, whom she had bumped into at the hospital that day. How did he meet her here? Yin Shirshir froze on the spot, a trace of doubt and surprise appearing on her face. This was too much of a coincidence. Song Inya had originally come to Hushin Island with her friends to take a cruise ship to enjoy the night view around the island. She bought a ticket, but she still had to wait in line, so she decided to go along the lake to enjoy the night view. Chapter 623. She was used to being spoiled, so she was about to flare up when she saw the person looking up. It was Yin Shirshir. She was shocked for a moment, and then suspicion appeared on her face. Without a doubt, she recognized the woman in front of her at a glance. That day, the screen displayed on Muyaja's phone was this woman's sleeping face. Yin Shirshir was very beautiful. She was different from those female celebrities in the entertainment industry who had walked out of the plastic surgery production line. Be it her facial features or temperament, she was very recognizable. Song Inya had a photographic memory after seeing that photo once. Unlike the sleeping face in the photo, she was now wearing an elegant black dress with delicate and clear light makeup on her face. Compared to the sleeping face in the photo, she had a more unique charm. She was more beautiful in person than in the photo. This was a fact that she was unwilling to admit. It was no wonder that Brother Mu seemed to dote on her. A woman like her was indeed the type that men would fall in love with. Her face was elegant and her temperament was otherworldly. If she were a man, she would be tempted as well. Why was she here though? Yin Shirshir felt a little strange when she saw Song Inya staring at her in shock. Naturally, she did not know that Song Inya had seen her photo on Muyaja's phone. She thought that Song Inya was angry at her for bumping into her, so she quickly handed the phone back to her. Sorry, I was careless just now. Take a look and see if the phone is damaged. Song Inya took the phone from her hand and lowered her head to take a look. There was no damage to the phone. Seeing that the phone was not damaged, Yin Shirshir turned to leave. However, Song Inya called out to her. Yin Shirshir. She called out her name directly. Yin Shirshir was stunned and turned around in confusion. How did this woman know her name? She hadn't officially met her, had she? I didn't recognize the wrong person, did I? Song Inya raised her chin proudly and walked slowly toward her. Is this your name? She had a habit of checking Weibo. That day, the production team of The Green Apple posted a set photo on Weibo, and it quickly became a trending topic. She clicked on it and saw that it was her. At the same time, she knew her name. Yin Shirshir. She remembered that the villa developed by the Mu family was called Yin Shanshir Yi. Was it just a coincidence? Or did Brother Mu purposely name it after this woman? Song Inya followed the Weibo account of the production team of The Green Apple. Ever since the start of filming, Yin Shirshir's behind-the-scenes photos had the highest exposure rate. It was obvious that this woman was not ordinary. Yes, Yin Shirshir is my name. You are? Yin Shirshir looked at her and politely asked for her name. You don't deserve to know my name. Song Inya crossed her arms and retorted haughtily. When Yin Shirshir heard this, the polite smile on her face immediately turned cold. This woman was really arrogant. She curled her lips and smiled. It's fine. I don't care anyway. It was as if she really wanted to know. She couldn't be bothered to lower herself to her level. Song Inya choked on her words. Is there anything else? Yin Shirshir smiled gracefully. If there's nothing else, I'll leave first. Stop right there. Seeing that she was about to leave, Song Inya gritted her teeth and stomped her feet in jealousy. She chased after her and grabbed her shoulders. Chapter 624. What are you doing? Yin Shirshir was furious as well. She shook off her grip abruptly, feeling that the other was being ridiculous. Why was she glaring at her as if she wanted to swallow her whole? Song Inya sneered and retorted. Did I say you could leave? That's strange. Who are you? Why should I listen to you? Yin Shirshir was baffled. Are you crazy? Huh? Song Inya was so angry that she laughed. Crossing her arms over her chest, she glared fiercely at her. Yin Shirshir, why don't you take a good look at your status? How dare you talk to me like that with your lowly status? Miss, what does my status have to do with you? You're so arrogant that I thought you were a princess from some royal family. Judging from your upbringing, you don't seem to have been educated in etiquette. Yin Shirshir retorted mercilessly, leaving Song Inya at a loss for words. She did not expect Yin Shirshir to be so sharp-tongued despite her frail and harmless appearance. Song Inya pursed her lips coldly and suddenly took a step closer to her. Her pair of sinister eyes scanned her from head to toe before she laughed. I think you're just so. At most, you're a little more seductive on the surface. I'm afraid you're really cheap deep down. Who do you think you are? Do you think you're a socialite from the upper class just because you're wearing a gown? Dream on. A commoner will always be a commoner. Don't even think about marrying into the rich. Yin Shirshir was stunned. She was confused by the other's sarcasm. She did not know how she had offended this Missy for her to be so hurtful. Song Inya continued. In this day and age, you're so righteous about being a third party in someone else's marriage? You've really opened my eyes. I don't know what you're talking about. You do. Song Inya grabbed her wrist and spat viciously. *tch, you like to seduce men, don't you? You clearly know that Brother Mu has a fiancé, yet you're still shamelessly sticking to him. Don't you have any shame? What did you say? Yin Shirshir angrily shook off her hand, but she stopped abruptly in the middle of her sentence. Belatedly, he realized who the Brother Mu she was talking about was. He also understood the hidden meaning behind her words. Muyaja. How could she have forgotten that this woman was Muyaja's cousin? But how did she know about him? Could it be that Muyaja mentioned it to her? What did he say to her? Yin Shirshir's expression was a little ugly. Let me give you a piece of advice. As a woman, it's best to be thick-skinned. Brother Mu already has a fiancé, so you'd better stay away from him. If Grandpa Mu finds out that you've interfered in Brother Mu's marriage, he won't let you off. Song Inya's face was filled with disgust. The contempt in her eyes was so scorching that it could burn her skin. Although Yin Shirshir was angry, she still looked up to meet her cold and disdainful gaze. She had no intention of backing down. She kept looking at Song Inya's face and saw a hint of jealousy and hatred on her face. There was almost no need to hide her jealousy. Is she jealous? Usually, when a woman shows such a vicious and jealous expression, that man must be very important in her heart. Chapter 625. She likes him? Yin Shirshir pursed her lips. She still could not forget the scene she saw at the hospital previously. She used him and longed for his love for her. The expression on her face was not that of a sister's dependence on her brother. It was possessiveness, desire, an attachment that could not be obtained. There was no doubt that Song Inya liked Muyaja. It was just that, more or less, it was not appropriate for her to be so obvious. However, at least in her heart, her feelings for her cousin Muyaja were not that simple. Yin Shirshir somewhat understood. On the surface, she was insulting her as a third party. In reality, how could Song Inya not yearn to stand beside Muyaja as a woman, and not as a cousin? After understanding it, Yin Shirshir smiled and slowly said, I think you're wrong about something. What? Song Inya was stunned. I'm not a third party who interfered in his marriage. Yin Shirshir raised her eyebrows and an elegant yet cold smile appeared on her face. Muyaja has a fiancé, but it's just an engagement. Is he married? I don't think so. Where did the saying of interfering in a marriage come from? But Brother Mu and Mu Wanru are already engaged. Song Inya almost blurted out in anger. However, Yin Shirshir noticed her choice of words. Mu Wanru. She called out her name almost without thinking. Presumably, this woman's heart was extremely unbalanced by the fact that Mu Wanru was Muyaja's fiancé. Yin Shirshir smiled. So what? It's just an engagement. It's a marriage arranged by the family. There's no love or feelings between the two. Interfered? Ha! Song Inya was completely enraged by her sneer. Therefore she sneered without thinking. Ha! Aren't you a little too naive? Do you really think that Brother Mu likes you sincerely? She's just toying with you. Do you really think that you can rise to the top and marry into a rich family in a dignified manner? The Mu family was the richest family in the capital. How could Grandpa Mu allow an actress to marry into the Mu family? If you want to climb up the social ladder of the Mu family, go back and buy a pillow. Even your dreams are more realistic than this. His words were, without a doubt, mocking Yin Shirshir for daydreaming. The blatant mockery was like a needle dipped in salt, fiercely piercing into his heart, causing him incomparable pain. Yin Shirshir felt a stab of pain in her heart, but she still maintained an elegant smile on her face and asked, So what? You. Song Inya exclaimed in exasperation when she saw how shameless the other was. You're shameless. Actually, you're right. Yin Shirshir pouted innocently. She had a helpless expression on her face, as if she had been seen through. I want to be promoted. I'm here to snatch your brother Mu Wanru's fiancé. I'm the third party. But, after a pause, Yin Shirshir raised her eyes and glared at her coldly. What can you do to me? You. Song Inya raised her hand, wanting to slap the other's face in anger. Yin Shirshir raised her hand and held it tightly. She exerted so much force that a deep red mark was almost left on the other's fair wrist. She looked as if she was boneless and weak, but Song Inya did not expect her to be so strong. Chapter 626. What's the matter? You can't win an argument, so you want to get physical? What a missy's temper. Yin Shirshir suddenly flung her hand away. Caught off guard, Song Inya lost her balance and fell to the ground. Haha, interesting. You're Muyaja's cousin, aren't you? As soon as she finished speaking, Yin Shirshir casually walked over and looked down at her condescendingly. She leisurely asked, "Why? You can't hide the jealousy on your face, can you? Don't tell me that you like Muyaja?" Her voice was casual, but there was a strong sense of sarcasm in it. Yin Shirshir's rhetorical question made Song Inya's face turn ghastly pale in an instant. There was no doubt that women understood each other. Men could not tell. Muyaja could not tell. However, it did not mean that Yin Shirshir could not tell. This Song Inya obviously had feelings for Muyaja. There was no way to hide her feelings. Yin Shirshir could tell at a glance. Especially at this moment, Song Inya's flustered and ashamed expression was obvious. So that was really the case. Yin Shirshir shook her head and sighed. So that's how it is. You've fallen for your cousin. Is it any of your business? Song Inya raised her head and said angrily. At this moment, she had fallen to the ground, and Yin Shirshir was talking to her condescendingly. Her aura instantly diminished. Hence, she immediately tried to get up from the ground. Yin Shirshir stretched out her leg and stepped on her hand with her sharp high heel. Song Inya screamed and retracted her hand with a pained expression. She glared at her with a pale face. You're so pitiful. Yin Shirshir mocked expressionlessly. One cousin, the other cousin. Close relatives. This is incest. It's truly shocking. You. Song Inya was so angry at her words that her face turned red and white and instantly darkened. Look, you've fallen in love with a man, but this man is your cousin. You can't be together in this lifetime. What is it if not pitiful? She then added unhurriedly. I'm different from you though. I even have a child with him. As soon as she finished speaking, Song Inya was so shocked that her face turned pale, and she stared at her in disbelief. Yin Shirshir was in a good mood as she admired the other's pale and colorless face. She asked airily, "What about you? What about you? Cousins, close relatives, being together is against the rules of ethics." Song Inya was momentarily stunned. She stared fixedly at Yin Shirshir's face before regaining her senses. Her eyebrows and the outline of her lips. Tu's Xiaoyichen's eyebrows. At first she did not pay attention to it, so she did not realize this. Now that she saw it, she was shocked. Could it be Xiaoyichen is Muyaja's child? This realization almost hit Song Inya to hell, and she was instantly buried in a sea of fire. Who's the wishful thinking and daydreaming? Do you think you can be with the man you love without me? Yin Shirshir sneered as if mocking her naivety. That's what's really laughable. Shut up. Shut up. You shut up. Song Inya screamed and covered her ears, not wanting to hear her mockery. Chapter 627. Song Inya's heart skipped a beat when she heard that. She raised her head, feeling suffocated, and met Yin Shirshir's cold gaze. He said that he only treats you as a younger sister. If I take it to heart, he'll keep a distance from you and even cut off all contact with you. That one sentence sent Song Inya to hell mercilessly. At that moment, even her heart seemed to have stopped beating. Tears burst out of her eyes and rolled down her cheeks. She clenched her teeth tightly, unwilling to look up and let Yin Shirshir see her sorry state. She could only choke on her sobs. You're lying. You're lying. Brother Mu loves me the most. He would never lie to me because of you. If you don't believe me, you can ask him. Yin Shirshir was not lying. This was what Muyaja said himself back then. She was just repeating what he said. Yin Shirshir pursed her lips as she recalled how Song Inya had acted all high and mighty in front of her earlier. The thought of it infuriated her. Now that she knew that Muyaja only treated her as a younger sister, she could not take the blow and broke down. She was just a vase and very delicate. In fact, she was also a woman who held grudges. One was not a gentleman if one did not take revenge. Therefore, she planned to add another stab to Song Inya's bloody wound. It seems that you don't have much weight in his heart. He actually cut off all contact with his cousin, because of a woman you said was just a game. I've really let you down for being so devoted to him. Song Inya screamed at her uncontrollably. Shut up. You be *th. With that, she pounced on Yin Shirshir from the ground with bared fangs and brandished claws. That shrewish posture made it seem as if she wanted to strangle her to death. At this moment, Song Inya had already lost her rationality after being provoked by Yin Shirshir's words. All she wanted was to teach this *tch a lesson. Yin Shirshir, however, did not even bother to look at her. With a slight movement of her body, she hooked Song Inya with the tip of her foot. In her fury, the Missy did not see the tripper clearly and tripped unsuspectingly, falling face first into the mud. The cement floor was filled with jagged gravel. Song Inya, who was wearing a short skirt, scraped the skin on her knees from the fall, causing numerous bloody spots to appear on them. Her palms were also scraped, and streaks of blood seeped out. She was in a sorry state. Song Inya lowered her head to take a look at the gruesome abrasions on her knees. In the Song family, she had always been a princess who had been doted on since she was young. Before Song and she was born, she was the only one the Song. Her father, mother, doted on her, and elder brother, she had never suffered any grievances. Even after Song and she's birth, Papa Song and Mama Song's love for her did not diminish at all. Her spoiled Song Inya, and Song Inya's. Being pampered like this, Song Inya was really spoiled like a princess. Her body was as flawless as white jade. She had always been vain, and would not let herself get hurt. Now when she lowered her head and saw the terrible injuries on her knees, she glared at Yin Shirshir and screamed, Yin Shirshir, you be *tch shameless. Tears rolled down and wet her face. Song Inya's meticulously applied makeup was ruined by her tears. Chapter 628. In short, she was scheming and elegant. Song Inya was momentarily stunned when she heard that. Her eyes widened as she sized up the woman before her in disbelief. Her heart skipped a beat, and she gritted her teeth hard. You be *tc, smack. Yin Shirshir raised her hand and gave her a tight slap. Song Inya's face was slapped to the side. Her eyes widened in disbelief as she held her stinging cheek in disbelief. She had been slapped by someone. Yin Shirshir looked down at her coldly and sneered. Didn't your parents teach you any manners? Yin Shirshir, how dare you hit me? Song Inya was so angry that her eyes turned red. Smack. Yin Shirshir smiled and gave her another slap. This time, Song Inya was completely stunned. I'll let you see if I dare to hit you or not. Yin Shirshir straightened her clothes expressionlessly. Song Inya was about to flare up when she saw her elegantly turn around and leave. Yin Shirshir. Stop right there. Song Inya gritted her teeth and got up from the ground to chase after her. A hint of impatience appeared on Yin Shirshir's face. This Song Inya really doesn't know pain until she suffers. While the two were arguing, a waiter who had been waiting at the port for a long time saw the scene and locked his gaze on Yin Shirshir. Seeing her black off-the-shoulder gown, silky hair, and exquisite makeup, he knew that she must be tonight's VIP guest. Hence he hurried forward and interrupted Song Inya's unreasonable tantrum. Hello. May I ask if you're Madam Yin Shirshir? Yin Shirshir turned around and saw the man in his uniform. He looked dignified and polite, so she smiled at him. Hello, I am. May I know who you are? Madam Yin, I'm the manager of Bali Restaurant. You're tonight's VIP guest, so I'm here to pick you up for dinner. Yin Shirshir was stunned. Song Inya, who was behind her, was also stunned. Bali Restaurant. Even Song Inya was shocked by this. Did Yin Shirshir come here to keep an appointment? In Bali, a set meal for couples was worth 13 million. Even in the whole of Beijing, this was a sky-high price. Bali was a Western restaurant that was rumored to be extremely dreamy. It was said that the dishes included 8 delicacies, accompanied by aged wine. From the small dishes to the large decorations, all of them were noble and exquisite. It was said that before the meal, they would take a 30-minute helicopter ride overlooking the beautiful scenery of Hushin Island. During the meal, they would also receive 10,000 roses. Just this alone was enough to make many women scramble for him. Being able to go on a date in Bali had become a symbol of supremacy. Who exactly was Yin Shirshir meeting? Her heart skipped a beat. Could it be Brother Mu? Yin Shirshir was also a little surprised. However, she had already guessed who had arranged all of this. She cast a sidelong glance at Song Enya from the corner of her eye, before turning to the senior waiter with a polite smile. All right, I'll follow you. Wait. Song Enya called out to her with a livid face. Are you on a date with Brother Mu? Yin Shirshir turned around and looked at her expressionlessly. Date? Would Muyaja go on a date with her? She couldn't imagine that he would spend so much time on dates. Therefore, she was not sure if Muyaja was planning to go on a date with her. However, when she saw Song Enya's conflicted and anxious expression, she smiled and said, Yes, so I'm going on a date with him. So, I'm going to keep my appointment. Don't follow me anymore. Chapter 629. Song Enya flew into a rage out of humiliation. Just as she was about to step forward again, she was stopped by a bodyguard who appeared just in time. Bali's security was in place. After all, they had to take care of the guests' personal safety and privacy. Hence, under the bodyguard's obstruction, Song Enya could only watch as Yin Shirshir was escorted onto the cruise ship. The Bali Western restaurant was located on Hushin Island, and the only way to get there was via a cruise ship. Unlike the cruise ships on the lake, this one was privately owned by the Bali Western restaurant, so it was much more luxurious than the ordinary cruise ships. Hence, when Yin Shirshir boarded the cruise ship under the guidance of the waiter, it immediately attracted the exclamations of those who were standing at the harbor overlooking the scenery. For a moment, there were discussions of jealousy, amazement, and envy. Oh God! Is that the Bali Western restaurant's private cruise ship? Oh my God! It's so luxurious. Isn't it? I heard that this cruise ship cost a fortune. Oh God! Bali! That's my dream. Yin Shirshir stood in front of the railing as the cruise ship started moving. It slowly left the harbor and headed toward Hushin Island. She lowered her head and looked at the waves that kept rising. The bright starlight on the cruise ship reflected on the lake's surface, making it a beautiful sight. The silver moon on the horizon was like a hook. Standing on the deck, Yin Shirshir hugged her shoulders, and could not help feeling a little chilly. The waiter considerately put a jacket on her. Yin Shirshir thanked him politely, but even with the jacket, she did not feel cold. Her heart was still cold though. The Mews are the richest family in the capital. How can Grandpa Mu allow an actress to marry into his family? If you want to climb the social ladder of the Mews, go back and buy a pillow. Even your dreams are more realistic than this. Do you really think that Brother Mu likes you from the bottom of his heart? He's just playing with you. Do you really think that you can climb up the social ladder and marry into a rich family in a dignified manner? In this day and age, is it so justifiable to be a third party and interfere in someone else's marriage? Third party? Yin Shirshir's lips curled into a cold smile. What a joke. How did she become the third party? Everything that Mu Wanru originally had belonged to her. Mu Wanru was the real third party, wasn't she? She took away the token that her mother's left for her. Took away her identity. Took away her family. She had taken away her fiancé. Isn't the third party Mu Wanru? How did it become her? She of the nights to two of course of the night, two of the night to the winds to lift her messy hair, and straighten her back to it. Well, what Mu Wanru had should have belonged to her. Since that was the case, then she would take back everything that originally belonged to her. Even if she didn't care for all of this. The of Yuns. Thinking of Mu Wanru's disgusting face, Yin Shirshir felt disgusted from the bottom of her heart. The crimes and grievances that she had to bear for more than 10 years were all in her heart. She swore that she would take back everything that originally belonged to her. The cruise ship soon sailed to the harbor of the island. There were already people waiting for them at the harbor, standing in a row. Chapter 630. There was only one private room in the restaurant. The huge private room was at least 300 square meters. When the waiter led Yin Shirshir into the private room, she was greeted by the extremely luxurious decorations. Just the beautiful and resplendent crystal chandelier alone was enough to tell that it was expensive. Yin Shirshir walked to the table and saw exquisite cutlery on the table. She picked up the chopsticks and saw that they were made of jade. They were even inlaid with diamonds and engraved with her name. Yenshishi, it was so luxurious that it made one speechless. No wonder it was rumored that a couple's set meal at the Bali restaurant was worth tens of millions. Even every detail was exquisite and luxurious. She looked around but did not see Muyaja. Yin Shirshir turned around and asked curiously, "Who made the reservation? Why don't I see him?" She could not help but feel suspicious. What was Muyaja trying to do? He brought her here but did not see him. The waiters looked at each other, but they smiled without saying anything. Yin Shirshir saw that they were pretending to be mysterious. She raised her eyebrows slightly and decided not to think about it. She walked around the private room alone and accidentally found that there was an observation deck in the private room. Yin Shirshir could not help but be attracted by the Hubble Space Telescope on the observation deck. "Is this a telescope?" Yin Shirshir pointed at the telescope and asked. She didn't know much about astronomy, so she wasn't sure if this was a real telescope. The waiter behind her smiled and said, "Yes, I heard that there will be a meteor shower tonight. Miss Yin, do you want to take a look?" "Sure." Yin Shirshir gladly agreed. She was quite interested in this telescope. Therefore, she walked to the telescope and the waiter quickly adjusted it for her. Yin Shirshir clumsily looked through the telescope and saw the beautiful starry sky. Incredible! Usually when looking up at the starry sky, one could only see the scattered stars in the night sky. However, through the telescope, one could see that these stars were not of the same size. Some stars were very small as a grain of sand. However, some of the stars were very large. They were either blue or orange in color. Most of them were like diamonds embedded in the night sky, shining brightly and very charming. The stars contrasted with each other and came into view like a beautiful starry sky. It was so beautiful that it was suffocating. Yin Shirshir could not help but be fascinated by it. It was no wonder that many astronomy enthusiasts were fascinated by astronomy. Indeed, a starry sky like this could not help but be fascinated. Yin Shirshir was in a daze and did not notice that the waiter behind her had already left the private room. She stared at the stars in the sky in a trance. Suddenly, a bright and dazzling shooting star flashed across the camera lens. Fast, very fast. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared without a trace. Alas, Yin Shirshir was still unable to contain her excitement. It was as if this was the first time in her life that she had seen a meteor. Yin Shirshir could not help but exclaim. She looked up and said excitedly, "I saw a meteor." Turning around, Yin Shirshir wanted to announce the news excitedly, but she bumped into a warm and firm chest. Her forehead hurt a little. Chapter 631. Her gaze could not help but be drawn to the exquisite diamond on the pendant. It was meticulously carved into the shape of a shooting star. At first glance, it was as eye-catching as a shooting star. Yin Shirshir looked up in shock. Muyaja had unknowingly appeared behind her. He was wearing a black shirt and had smooth and neat black hair. On his handsome face, a pair of deep and mesmerizing eyes were quietly fixed on her. In his eyes, there was a gentleness that had never been seen from him, who had always been arrogant and cold. This rare gentleness seemed to be able to melt the coldest glacier in the world. Yin Shirshir was shocked. Could the shooting star that had flashed across the camera just now be this diamond necklace? She knew that everything that had happened tonight was probably a so-called surprise that this man had specially arranged. But what surprised her was that she did not think that this man would waste his time on a date. From what she knew, his time should be very precious. He was in charge of the huge Dishing financial group and should be very busy every day. But, even though she was somewhat mentally prepared, she still did not expect that he would have prepared all this for her. For a moment, she was a little confused. Could it be that he knew that he had gone too far last night? So he had prepared this mysterious date to create a surprise for her and bridge the gap between them because of what had happened last night? What she didn't know was how arrogant this man was. She was his first woman. She was also the woman that he was willing to spend time and effort to pamper. He had never put so much effort into dating before. However, this was his first time doing so. Although he had consulted Minyu's opinion on many aspects of this date, he still did not know how to guess a woman's thoughts. What did she like? What did she not like? He had no idea. He could only rely on Minyu's suggestions and slowly figure it out. Muyaja lowered his head to look at her. His gaze landed on her, and saw that her beautiful peach blossom eyes were staring at the diamond pendant dangling in front of her in surprise. This man had meticulously prepared all this. Could it be that he felt guilty about what had happened last night? Was that why he did all this to make up for it? Yin Shirshir cursed in her heart. From time to time, she would raise the corners of her eyes slightly to size up Muyaja's expression. You like it? He opened his mouth slightly, his voice clear and deep. Yin Shirshir did not say anything. She looked at him with anger in her eyes. She thought about how bad this man was yesterday. Seeing him, her heart was filled with anger. However, her gaze once again fell on this almost suffocatingly beautiful pendant. Even though she tried her best to maintain the cold curve of her lips, she still lightly curved her lips because of this unexpected surprise. Muyaja looked at the gentle light in her eyes. She probably liked this surprise. Women should have lost their resistance to such surprises. Therefore, he held her shoulders and turned her around, wanting to put the diamond pendant on her neck. Yin Shirshir suddenly broke free from his grasp. With his closeness, her face quickly regained its indifference. In his eyes, she was still angry with him. You don't like it? Muyaja asked in a deep voice as if he was asking for her opinion. Yin Shirshir glanced sideways at the pendant lying in his palm, but she shook her head coldly. Chapter 632. How could he not see her stubbornness and going against her will? This woman was clearly still angry at him. Looking at her eyes just now, it was clear that she really liked this pendant. She was clearly throwing a tantrum with him. Muyaja's lips curled into a playful smile, so he said, If you don't like it, I'll throw it away. After saying this, without waiting for her to react, Muyaja strode to the railing of the observation deck and forcefully threw the pendant into the lake. The observation deck was very close to the lake. The strength in his hand naturally could not be underestimated. With one throw, the pendant disappeared without a trace. Yin Shirshir turned her eyes and just happened to see his action. Her heart fiercely trembled. And then she could not care about maintaining the reserved expression on her face. She anxiously walked to his side and looked in the direction he had thrown the pendant, but she could not see it. Her heart was filled with anger. Yin Shirshir angrily bit her lips and turned around to forcefully push him. What are you doing? What's wrong with me? Muyaja looked at her with an innocent face, as if he was confused and did not understand the situation. Why are you randomly throwing the pendant that you gave me into the lake? Is it very interesting? Yin Shirshir's eyes were filled with anger and shame. You said you didn't like it. Muyaja's voice was deep and his deep eyes seemed to silently remind her that it was because she did not like this pendant that he had thrown it away. Yin Shirshir was speechless. You threw it away because I don't like it? If you don't like it, it has lost its value. The man slightly raised his arrogant chin, but his tone was matter of fact. It was as if the value of this pendant was not measured by its cost. It was measured by whether she liked it or not. If she didn't like it, then this pendant had clearly lost its value. It was not a pity to throw away something that had no value. Yin Shirshir deeply knitted her brows. She was angry and amused at the same time. She said that she didn't like it, but did she really not like it? In fact, she really liked this pendant and thought it was very beautiful, but she just didn't want to forgive him so easily. How could he not understand a woman's thoughts? She actually liked this pendant very much. I like it very much. It could be seen that he had carefully selected them. Whether it was the cutting or the polishing, every angle was very delicate. The cost of the production must be expensive. He had carefully prepared such a surprise for her, but she only wanted him to make a statement about his attitude last night. Even if it was just an apology, she would be very happy. But did he have to be so arrogant? Just because she said she didn't mean it, he threw away such an expensive pendant just like that. The most important thing was that she really liked it. Yin Shirshir stared at him expressionlessly. She was angry and annoyed, so she simply turned her head away and didn't want to bother with him anymore. She turned around in a fit of pique and no longer looked at him. She pursed her lips and looked at the calm surface of the lake, but her heart was filled with anger. When Muyaja saw this, he could not help but smile and walk behind her. A pair of long slender legs stuck close to her skirt. Yin Shirshir turned her head and pursed her lips as she stared at him. Her eyes seemed to be warning him to keep a distance from her. It was obvious that her anger had not subsided. Wuxia could not help laughing. He knew that she must be very angry at this moment. Not only did he not keep a distance from her, he seemed to be sticking closer to her. Chapter 633. No. Yin Shishir ignored his closeness and coldly replied. Although he said no, there was a strong sense of displeasure in his tone. Presumably, his action of throwing away the pendant had angered her. Wuxia's lips curled into a smile as he leaned closer to her ear and whispered. Little liar, you're obviously angry. How would I dare to be angry with you, the great CEO Mu? Yin Shishir's lips curled into a cold smile as she said in a half-mocking and half-sneering tone. You said that you don't like that pendant, but you actually like it a lot? He lowered his eyes and his gaze fell onto her angry face as his words pierced through her thoughts. That's your thing. You can throw it away as you wish. What has it got to do with me? Yin Shishir retorted in a bad mood. But she totally didn't realize that at this moment. The two of them were so close to each other as they exchanged words. It seemed like they were flirting with each other. Wuxia's lips curled into a smile as he secretly thought that this woman was really awkward. But she was also really stupid. She didn't even use her brain to think carefully. Did she really think that he couldn't tell how much she liked that pendant? Wuxia slowly opened his palm. That necklace that he had thrown away, at this moment, was like a magic trick as it quietly laid horizontally in his palm. Under the bright moonlight, it emitted an enchanting and resplendent luster. In actual fact, he had long seen that her disdain wasn't because she really didn't like it. It was just a woman who said one thing and meant another when she was angry. He could tell that she liked it a lot. That action of throwing the necklace earlier was just a bluff. He didn't expect that she really thought that he had thrown the pendant into the lake. That nervous expression was completely captured by his eyes. Wuxia stood behind her and gently brushed her hair aside. In an instant, that porcelain white neck was exposed in front of his eyes. Wuxia's eyes heated up as his back suddenly tensed up. Her soft and tender skin was snow white and flawless, like a fine piece of art. Especially at this moment, when the light was dim, it made her skin seem even brighter. She was as beautiful as jade. She was truly as beautiful as jade. Coupled with the elegant black gown on her body, the black and white matched, giving off a forbidden seduction that came from her bones. Looking at this beautiful scene, his eyes couldn't help but become deep and serene, so much so that it implicated a certain part of his body that had quietly changed and become vigorous and hot. Yin Shishir twisted her body, trying to break free from his grasp. He said in a deep voice, "Don't move. You don't move, or I'll do you right now." Wuxia's voice was taut with forbearance and restraint. Hearing this, Yin Shishir didn't dare to move. There was no doubt about it. If she really moved, she would not be able to move. This man was a man of his words. He really ate her dry on the observation deck. She had already experienced this man's dominance, so there was no doubt about it. While she was feeling gloomy, she suddenly felt a trace of coldness on her neck. She couldn't help but look down. Her gaze fell on her neck, but she saw an exquisite and resplendent diamond dangling from her collarbone. It was actually the one he had thrown away earlier? Didn't he throw it away? Could it be that he was just scaring her? Yin Shishir was stunned. She was shocked, but her lips couldn't help curling into a smile. Wuxia lowered his head and whispered in her ear word by word, "Wear this pendant for me." Chapter 634. You're not allowed to take it off. His tone was as strict as ever, domineering to the point of being unreasonable. Yin Shishir's fingertips gently rubbed the pendant. She looked up at him and angrily said, "Unreasonable." "That's right, I'm unreasonable." Wuxia slowly pulled her into his embrace from behind as his gaze fell onto her face. He saw her slightly lowering her head as her beautiful peach blossom eyes looked at the pendant on her neck. Her fingertips rubbed it lovingly as her light pink lips formed a faint smile. "Didn't you say you didn't like it?" Wuxia couldn't help having the thought of teasing her. Yin Shishir gave a cold snort. "I just think it's a pity to throw it away." "Stubborn mouth," he lightly said. This stupid woman's mouth seemed to be very stubborn, but it could be seen that she really liked his gift. Wuxia stared at the shallow dimples on her face and couldn't help having some thoughts. He inexplicably wanted to fiercely seal her lips. Driven by this thought, he immediately took action. He pulled her into his arms, lowered his head, and kissed her pink little mouth. Her soft and tender lips were extremely warm and soft, revealing a sweet taste that made one want more uncontrollably. Yin Shishir's eyes opened wide in astonishment. The man's kiss suddenly came, and she was not prepared at all. Her eyes opened wide in a daze as his enlarged handsome face appeared in front of her. His deep silhouette was exquisite and handsome, making him look very handsome. Only when she looked at him from such a close distance did she discover that this man's eyelashes were excessively long. They were thick and black, like two black phoenix feathers. It was no wonder his gaze was so deep and seductive. It had to be said that this man had been blessed by the heavens since he was born. Outstanding features, a proud family background, and a shocking background. This kind of man should be sought after by many women. It was no wonder that in the capital, there were many socialites who liked him. Even his cousin was infatuated with him. Indeed, this kind of man was loved by all. His thin lips were slightly cold. Yin Shishir couldn't help but fall into a daze. She remembered that according to the physiognomy, people with thin lips were mostly fickle and overly rational. Could this man be fickle in love? She allowed him to kiss her. Her reaction was somewhat passive. She did not dare to resist too much, and could only endure his domineering kiss. He kissed her fiercely and urgently. His kiss went deep into her throat. If it was possible, he probably wanted to swallow her whole. Yin Shishir's thoughts couldn't help but drift away inexplicably until the man hugged her waist tightly. While gently kissing her lips, he said, "That day, you blacklisted me. Was it because Mu Wanru said something to you, Yin Shishir was stunned and slowly opened her eyes. However, she saw that Mu Yaja had also opened his eyes and was looking at her. His eyes were asking her silently, "Why aren't you saying anything?" Mu Yaja grabbed her chin with a puzzled look on his face. At first, he only suspected that Mu Wanru had run to Yin Shishir to bluff, and claimed that she was pregnant with his flesh and blood. Too many women were sensitive, especially a stubborn woman like Yin Shishir. She couldn't accept it. But it was just a suspicion. What had happened back then that made her blacklist him for no reason? He still had to ask her. His question reminded her of Mu Wanru's pregnancy. Chapter 635. Yin Shishir hesitated for a moment and said slowly, "She told me that she was pregnant. She accused me of being the third party in your marriage." Huh. Mu Yaja sneered when he heard that. He couldn't help but feel a little annoyed and helpless. So you believed her? He might be able to accept it if his number was blacklisted because of other things. But she actually believed it just because a woman said a few insignificant words in front of her. He didn't even ask for any proof. He didn't even give him any chance to explain himself before he was sent to prison. This woman was too much. Yin Shishir couldn't help raising her eyebrows when she saw his mocking smile. "What's wrong? You believed what she said unconditionally. So." His deep-set eyes stared fixedly at her face as he retorted, "Am I not enough for you to trust me unconditionally? Why should I believe you?" Yin Shishir questioned him helplessly. She didn't seem to be in a position to question him. When she found out from Mu Wanru that she was pregnant with his flesh and blood, the despair she felt was enough to destroy the heavens and earth. Without any doubt, she almost believed him. Because she really didn't seem to be in a position to question it, did she? She was his fiancé. And he was her fiancé. Even if she was pregnant with his flesh and blood, wasn't it legitimate? Shouldn't she obediently withdraw at this time? But now she didn't think so. Everything that Mu Wanru belonged to now belonged to her. She wouldn't back down anymore. She would take back everything that belonged to her by hook or by crook. Yin Shishir pursed her lips at that thought, but she heard the man chuckle above her head. "My child said it." Yin Shishir frowned. Mu Yaja stared at her awkward expression, and suddenly thought of something. He said mischievously, "You blacklisted me because you were jealous?" She looked up in shock. She saw the man looking down at her with an arrogant and smug expression on his face. Mu Yaja looked at her stunned expression. There was no anger on his face. It was full of arrogance and pride. He suddenly remembered Minyu's words. Jealousy equals like. This woman liked him. There was no doubt about it. In fact, her love for him was extraordinary. Hence, when Mu Wanru flaunted her prowess in front of her, she flew into a rage out of humiliation and blacklisted him. You like me? After a pause, Muyaja suddenly felt that this word wasn't suitable, so he changed it. Yin Shirshir, you're in love with me. It was a short few words, but his tone was overbearing and smug. Yin Shirshir was a little dumbfounded as she stared at him with wide eyes. She did not know where this man got his confidence from. Jealousy equals like? He actually automatically put her into such a formula. Where did this man get his sense of self-worth from? Still not admitting it? Muyaja reached out and scratched her delicate nose bridge as he chuckled. This woman must love him very much to be so jealous. Minyu said that women in love would have an incomprehensible sense of possessiveness. They usually didn't like their men to be close to any woman. The more jealous she was, the more it represented the irreplaceable position of the man in the woman's heart. Chapter 636. He had never liked jealous women. But for some reason, when he found out that Yin Shirshir was jealous, he felt a little happy. Yin Shirshir, let me tell you. Muyaja held her shoulders and turned her around, forcing her to look into his eyes. He said word by word, I didn't touch her. Yin Shirshir was stunned. She saw that he was looking at her very seriously, but there was a seriousness in his eyes that she had never seen before. Yin Shirshir, I haven't touched any other woman except you. Do you believe me? He explained again with a serious expression. Yin Shirshir's eyes flashed with confusion. The doubts in her heart slowly spread. She was very surprised by his so-called explanation. Last time in the bar, Mu Wanru announced to her that she was pregnant so arrogantly. Could it be fake? She quickly changed her mind and denied it. It couldn't be fake. When she bumped into Mu Wanru in the restaurant, she really had morning sickness. There was no trace of acting. Based on her experience, she concluded that this woman must be pregnant. Because when she was pregnant with Xiao Yichen and Yu Yu, her morning sickness was very serious. And Mu Wanru's symptoms were more than a month pregnant. But Muyaja told her that he didn't touch her. Could she believe it? Could she believe this man? Mu Wanru was faking it to fool her. Or was this man lying to her? Her thoughts were a little messed up. Yin Shirshir's expression suddenly turned cold. She couldn't accept that another woman was pregnant with his child. But what was even more unacceptable was that he was lying to her. Thus, Yin Shirshir smiled tactfully but seriously. Muyaja, you don't have to explain so much. Mu Wanru is obviously pregnant, but you said that you didn't touch her? After a pause, she stared into his eyes and asked seriously, or are you lying to me like I'm a child? Are you messing with me? Do you really think I'm that gullible? Muyaja was a little angry. Are you questioning my words? Yin Shirshir's face paled. Doubt? If you haven't touched her, then whose child is she carrying? Could it be that she cheated on you? She didn't believe that Mu Wanru had an affair, and she didn't believe that the child in her belly wasn't Muyaja's. If that was the case, it would be a huge scandal for the Mu family. With Muyaja's proud personality, how could he tolerate such a betrayal? Muyaja's face changed. Seeing the undisguised doubt on her face, a trace of anger immediately appeared in his eyes. Yin Shirshir, you don't believe me? Yin Shirshir raised her chin and said expressionlessly, I only believe in facts. He was annoyed. She is pregnant, but the child is not mine. Then whose is it? Yin Shirshir was aggressive. Obviously, she didn't want to be perfunctorily brushed off like this. Muyaja's brows slightly furrowed. After a moment of silence, he said coldly, Listen, she is just a chess piece to me. A chess piece to be used in exchange for the power of the Mu family. From the beginning to the end, I haven't touched her at all. As for who the child in her belly is, you will know in the future. After a pause, he clasped her shoulders tightly and said in a deep voice, You just have to remember that I haven't touched her. That's enough. Yin Shirshir couldn't take it anymore and pushed him away. Can you not be so perfunctory with me? Chapter 637. Muyaja's eyes turned cold as a look of fury surfaced on his face. I never said that you're a pawn. You can get engaged to a so-called pawn, but you can't give me a proper reason. Am I actually less than a pawn in your eyes? Yin Shirshir sneered as she retorted. Muyaja's face instantly darkened. Instantly he froze. What do you mean? Yun Shirshir curled her lips into a smile as she tried hard to maintain her composure. However, the voice that escaped from her throat was slightly trembling. Muyaja, I like you. What about you? Do you like me? Muyaja opened his mouth slightly but could not make a sound. The word like was stuck in his throat, and he could not utter it. He had always been arrogant and proud. In front of the woman he liked, he could not frankly say the word like. Seeing his silence, Yun Shirshir's smile turned slightly cold. Then I'll tell you too. I like you. If I like you and have set my mind on you, can I give you my heart? What about you? Can you? He could. However, even though he thought so in his heart, the words that he wanted to say reached his lips, but no sound came out. Muyaja stared fixedly at her, and was momentarily speechless. Do you know who I met just now? Yun Shirshir's face was a little pale. Gradually, her eyelashes drooped as a look of disappointment flashed across her eyes. She said weakly, I met Song Inya. She righteously accused me in front of everyone, and mocked me for being a third party. Muyaja, are my feelings cheap? Or am I just a pawn in your eyes? A woman that you can summon when you're lonely and dismiss when you're tired of me? You can give Muwanru a proper marriage contract, but you can't give me a clean identity. I don't want a romantic date. I don't want a beautiful diamond pendant. I don't want you to go through so much trouble to please me. Yun Shirshir looked up at him with a pale face. Two pairs of eyes collided in the air. She looked at him and suddenly leaned closer to him. She pressed against his front and raised her hand to lightly tap his chest with her fingertips. There, she could feel his sonorous heartbeat. I want this part of yours. Can you give it to me? Muyaja's handsome eyes stared at her without blinking. Yun Shirshir's throat was dry as she questioned him again. I want to be loved and doted on legitimately. Can you give it to me? His silence from the start to the end gradually disheartened her. She laughed at herself, thinking that her earlier outburst of questioning was too laughable. In his heart, was she really just a chess piece that could come and go as he wished? Do you know what marriage means to me? If you can't even give me a proper identity, why should I like you? Yun Shirshir gritted her teeth and said weakly, I don't want to like you anymore. That sentence was like a cold thorn that pierced deep into his flesh. In that moment, his heart felt like it was pierced by a sharp sword. She didn't want to like him anymore? Damn woman. How could she talk to herself like that? She didn't want to like him, but did he allow it? Muyaja stood there. His tall and arrogant figure seemed to be petrified. The expression on his face was as cold as ice. In his eyes, there was only shock and anger. Yun Shirshir couldn't stand his silence and turned to leave. Chapter 638. Yun Shirshir felt a wave of dizziness wash over her, as she was pushed hard against the railing by him. Muyaja held her waist with one hand and pressed the other on the railing to keep her in front of him. I'll give you a chance to take back what you just said. He stared at her and said coldly, Take back what you said, Yun Shirshir. Take it back? Yun Shirshir's face turned pale. She suddenly curled her lips and asked seriously, Okay, which sentence do you want me to take back? Don't like me anymore. The corners of her lips curled up. She suddenly turned her eyes and looked elsewhere. Her face returned to its usual cold and expressionless state. She didn't say anything for a while. Muyaja saw that she was silent and couldn't help feeling annoyed. His dark eyes were filled with viciousness, and the hand holding her shoulder tightened. Say it. Yun Shirshir's gaze never fell on him. She wanted to speak several times, but she felt that her throat was dry. Say it. Muyaja lost his patience. This woman was really trying to anger him. He stared at her cold expression, and suppressed the anger that was on the verge of bursting out. Is it that hard to take back what I said? Muyaja suddenly stared at her coldly and grabbed her chin, forcing her to look up at him. He said word by word. Yun Shirshir, remember, I won't allow you to leave me. So, what do you mean by this? Yun Shirshir was so angry that she laughed and her lips curled up. Muyaja, do you want me to be like a mistress that you keep by your side? Like a canary in your cage? You're my woman, not a canary. Muyaja corrected her condescendingly as he glared at her. So you don't have to use this to brush me off. Yes. Women, you can have many women. Yun Shirshir said lightly, even though her heart ached. She tried to maintain a calm expression on her face. But I won't be the only one. You are. Why was this woman talking to herself? Other than her, he did not have any other woman. Mu Yaja said in a deep voice. You are my only one. Yin Shirshir stared at him in a daze. Suddenly, she asked in return. What proof can you use? You need me to give you a status. It was not a rhetorical question but a statement. There was no doubt about it. Yin Shirshir did not say a word, but it was a tacit agreement. On the observation deck, the cold wind blew. The evening breeze from the lakeside carried a bit of bone-chilling dampness. Yin Shirshir leaned against the handrail. Mu Yaja pressed a hand on her shoulder. Although he tried to control himself, he still hurt her. Her face was still deathly still, without any ripples. Mu Yaja stared at her with his dark eyes. Is a piece of paper worth you so much? Could it be that this woman believed this piece of paper, but not him? Yin Shirshir looked at him in astonishment. In this man's heart, could it be that the marriage certificate was just a piece of paper that was not important enough? Mu Yaja saw that she did not speak, so he asked again in a deep voice. Compared to that piece of paper, am I really not worthy of your trust? Yin Shirshir found it funny and asked back. You can't even give me a piece of paper. May I ask, how can I trust you? This piece of paper was a very sacred thing in her heart, and it was worthy of respect. But the value in his heart seemed to be very cheap. Chapter 639. Respect. Yin Shirshir said firmly. In her heart, marriage was sacred. Even though the family environment she grew up in didn't give her the idea that marriage was a happy one. But in her heart, she longed for a family. However, a family had to be built on this piece of paper. Only then could it be justified. I care about it a lot. I really care about it. What exactly are you thinking? If there's even a little place for me in your heart, how can you watch our child call another woman mommy? Yin Shirshir lost her composure a little and blurted out. This sentence was like a cold knife. It pierced his heart. Blood dripped. Mu Yaja's eyes were fixed on her. Do you really think that I want this status? Yin Shirshir's face was cold. Okay. Why don't we put ourselves in the same position? What? Mu Yaja, I love you. Yin Shirshir continued calmly. But similarly, I can't give you a status. Mu Yaja's body froze, and his eyes gradually darkened. I will marry another man. But you have to believe that it's just a piece of paper. Although I live under the same roof as him, he is my husband and I am his wife. You will call him daddy, and nothing will happen between him and me. But you have to believe that my heart will always be with you. Yin Shirshir smiled coldly and looked at Mu Yaja's frozen expression. She asked with a smile, Is this okay? Mu Yaja's eyes were filled with emotions. He seemed to be trying his best to suppress something. Yin Shirshir stared at his handsome face, trying to find a trace of change on his face. What? Since you don't care about something like status, then you definitely don't care about it. Enough. Not enough. Enough. Mu Yaja looked at her gloomily and interrupted her with a loud shout. Yin Shirshir, that's enough. Without giving her a chance to speak, he pressed down on her shoulders and kissed her fiercely. He kissed her madly without regard for anything else. It was as if the whole world was spinning. The kiss was deep and filled with fear. Her words just now had actually made him feel helpless and fearful. He couldn't imagine you calling another man daddy. It was even more unimaginable that she would become another man's wife in name. In the beginning, in his eyes, status was just a way to tie two people together. It was not binding. In his eyes, this was just a piece of paper on the Vanity Fair. It was insignificant. But now he didn't think so. He couldn't stand her being any man's wife in name. Not even a piece of paper. Yin Shirshir stubbornly kept her mouth shut, not giving him any chance to enter. Even though he attacked fiercely, she still did not open her mouth to welcome him. Mu Yaja seemed to have gone crazy. His eyes were dark red, and his strong arms hugged her waist tightly, forcing her body to be closer to his chest. But she still kept her lips tightly shut until the man tasted a faint trace of blood between their lips and teeth. Unknowingly, there was a crack on his lips, and there was a trace of blood on her lips. Mu Yaja looked down and the tip of his tongue slowly stroked her bleeding mouth. A trace of fishy sweetness immediately filled his mouth. Even if she was covered in wounds, She was still unwilling to accept his entry with this fishy sweetness. Chapter 640. Yin Shirshir, on the other hand, was like a puppet that had lost its soul. Her eyes were empty and lifeless. Pressing against his lips, Yin Shirshir opened her empty eyes and squeezed out a few words from the roots of her teeth. Muyaja, do you love me? Muyaja paused. His handsome face froze. Yin Shirshir persistently asked him, do you love me? I want to know. Do you treat me as a toy or as someone you love? Say it. Say it. Is this question difficult to answer? Yin Shirshir's gaze locked onto his dark eyes. In the next second, Muyaja took advantage of her and sealed her lips fiercely once again. Pressing his lips against hers, Muyaja stared into her eyes and uttered a low and hoarse word from his throat. Love. Yin Shirshir's eyes flashed for a second. Following that, she was in a trance for a moment, and actually froze on the spot. She had thought that he would remain silent until the end. However, she had never thought that he would actually say this word out loud. Love. Muyaja repeated this word slowly and gently embellished her kiss. The tip of his tongue traced the trace of sweetness at the side of her lips and slowly said, if you want that piece of paper, I'll give it to you. If this was what she wanted the most, then he would give it to her. Oh. Yin Shirshir was completely dumbfounded. If you want to dote on me legitimately, I'll give it to you. Yin Shirshir was stunned by his domineering tone. It was really unbelievable that such a proud man would lower himself to this extent. In fact, he was an extremely stubborn man. Stubborn and exclusive. Once he set his mind on something, he would continue to be stubborn and no one would be able to change his mind. Similarly, no one could replace the woman he had set his mind on. Whatever she wanted, he could satisfy her. However, he would never allow her to leave him. He looked up and his deep gaze locked onto her face. His brows relaxed slightly, adding a bit of warmth and gentleness. I can give you everything you want. Other than leaving my side, I can give you anything. Yin Shirshir looked at him in a daze. He pressed his lips against hers, his deep and clear words spilling out from between his lips. You want my body, my heart, I'll give it all to you, only you. I promise you, I won't touch any other woman, only you. As long as you. Could she understand? His confession was a little clumsy. There were no flowery words or promises like other men. Every word was so straightforward and stubborn. There was almost no hesitation as he spoke seriously to her. Yin Shirshir, I only want you. Muyaja. As long as you like it, I can give you my entire world. In fact, he did not hold back at all. Other than leaving my side, no matter what, he could give her anything. Now can I kiss you? Muyaja asked in a hoarse voice. He wanted her. He wanted her like a madman. This woman was a parasite. He had been poisoned by her parasite. Other than her, no one else could cure him. Yin Shirshir pursed her lips. It was not that she was not shocked. Slowly, she wrapped her arms around his waist. It was as if she was inviting him. Suddenly, her chin was gently lifted by his slender fingers. The man's perfect face approached her ambiguously. Muyaja then lowered his head and gently covered the corner of her lips with his thin, moist lips. Chapter 641. Yin Shirshir was stunned. Her eyes suddenly widened and she frowned in disbelief. Muyaja lowered his eyes and covered her eyes. He gently lowered his eyelids and kissed her softly. The deep affection that was so gentle that it reached her bones made her heart beat like thunder. The moonlight flowed gently and the mottled shadows of the stars. Against the pure white light, his face seemed to be plated with a layer of moonlight, making his skin look even more jade-like. Through the gaps between her fingers, Yin Shirshir opened her eyes. The man's handsome face was startled. Muyaja imprisoned her in front of his chest. He lifted her chin with one hand and rubbed the soft hair on the side of her face with the other. He sealed her lips. It was not as aggressive as before. Instead, it was a rare tenderness. He gently sucked on her soft pink lips and carefully cleaned her lips. Following the tip of his tongue, he gently pried open the gap between her lips and brushed past her pearly white teeth. The tips of his tongue seemed to touch her, as if there was nothing there. It seemed that no woman could resist this tenderness that could almost melt ice. Yin Shirshir was kissed by him until her face and ears turned red. A layer of red immediately appeared on her cheeks. Her hands were a little restless in front of his chest. Muyaja grabbed her wrist and slowly moved it to his waist. Yin Shirshir obediently hugged his waist. Their fingers were interlocked, but her knuckles were white from nervousness. A bunch of fireworks suddenly rose in the sky and bloomed beautifully in the night sky. Muyaja looked up slightly and gently caressed her face with his slender fingers. His fingertips touched the silky smooth skin. It made his heart skip a beat. A certain part of him was already tense to a critical point. He was ready to go. He kissed between her eyebrows. He liked her beautiful eyebrows. He kissed her eyes. He liked her soul-stirring peach blossom eyes. He kissed the tip of her nose. He liked her delicate and small nose. He kissed her lips. This was his favorite place. After tasting it, he wanted more. Muyaja's tall and straight body bullied her without restraint. She was almost bearing all of his weight, so it was inevitable that she would feel a little weak. Muyaja. The man seemed to have not heard her delicate begging for mercy. His hand slowly reached down and lifted the corner of her skirt. Muyaja. Yin Shirshir pouted. What is it? Don't do it here. Yin Shirshir compromised. Muyaja interrupted her blandly. It's right here. This was the most secluded and elegant place on Hushin Island. The viewing platform had the most beautiful night view of Hushin Island. At the same time, no one would disturb them. Yin Shirshir blushed and said, I'm hungry. I'm hungry too. Muyaja's voice was hoarse, revealing a bit of suppressed lust. His skin was magnetic. His breath was like an orchid, almost burning her cheeks in an instant. Yin Shirshir couldn't help but blush even more. Stop fooling around, okay? I'm not fooling around. I'm really hungry. I'm really hungry too. Yin Shirshir kept quiet out of spite. This man was really. Muyaja leaned over and kissed her sensitive earlobe. He said in a deep voice, I'll feed you first, then you can feed me, This was a step of his compromise. An exchange of conditions. His deep and obscure voice revealed his dark desire. Looking at her, his eyes were very deep, but there was no need to hide it. Especially the fire in his handsome eyes, he couldn't suppress it no matter what. Yin Shirshir licked her lips. She was really hungry. Chapter 642. In Yin Shirshir, other than breakfast, she locked herself in the room and lay on the bed to sleep. She had not eaten or drunk for the entire day. I want to eat first, Yin Shirshir said. In the next second, Muyaja carried her up. Her toes left the ground and the world spun. In the blink of an eye, Muyaja sat at the dining table with her in his arms. Yin Shirshir wanted to get down from him, but he did not allow it. His strong long arms wrapped tightly around her waist, and he sat her in his arms. His chest was warm and strong, enough to accommodate her entire world. Yin Shirshir bit her lips. Her entire body was in his arms. This position was too intimate. Her back was against his chest, and her legs were hanging on his legs. Through the thin material of his clothes, she could even clearly feel his strong heartbeat. Her face turned red. She struggled, trying to get down from him again. Muyaja's deep and magnetic voice rang above her head just in time. Don't move. Otherwise, I'll let you feed me right now. He endured to the extreme and suppressed to the extreme. His body was clamoring for her all the time. But considering that she was hungry, he tried very hard to endure the tension and heat that was clamoring for him all the time. Every time she moved, he would break down a little. After pressing the silver service bell on the table, the dishes were quickly served one by one. Soon, a delicious sumptuous meal was presented on the table. The table was neither big nor small, but the 18 exquisite dishes were just enough to fill it. The aroma hit them, catching them off guard. They were completely immersed in this amazing aroma. French pigeon meat pine tart, black truffle tomato with fresh oysters, orange French foie gras. Every single one of them was the best of the best in Western cuisine. It whetted one's appetite. Yin Shirshir stared at the dishes on the table with her mouth agape. Every dish was so exquisite, like an expensive work of art. Every dish was beautifully arranged. She was even a little reluctant to move her chopsticks, so as to destroy this extreme beauty. His stomach, however, was howling desperately. His mouth in particular, quickly secreted a gluttonous saliva. She swallowed, obviously starving. The corners of Muyaja's lips curled up slightly. His palm caressed her hungry stomach. It looked like she was really hungry. Thus, he held her waist with one hand and picked up the fork with the other. What do you want to eat? Yin Shirshir said in embarrassment. I'll do it myself. I'll feed you. Yin Shirshir persisted. No need, I can do it myself. Muyaja pinched her waist and reminded her in an ambiguous tone. We agreed that I would feed you. Save some energy. I'll be waiting for you to feed me later. Yin Shirshir's face turned even redder when she heard that. You don't have to, Muyaja said slowly. I'll feed you. His tone clearly did not allow anyone to object. Yin Shirshir simply gave up and let him sit on her body. Muyaja forked a small piece of steak and slowly brought it to her mouth. Yin Shirshir gently took a bite. Instantly, the meat juice overflowed. The meat was soft, and the inside was tough. It tasted great. Delicious. Delicious. It was so delicious that she almost could not speak. Her eyes swept across the dishes on the table, but her face was filled with incomparable satisfaction. Muyaja did not seem to be so enthusiastic about French food. Chapter 643. French cuisine was all about delicacy. Even if there was a slight difference in the texture, he would be able to tell right away. Different chefs had their own understanding of delicacies. Therefore, the same dish would taste different when cooked by different chefs. There was no doubt that his taste in delicacies was still better than hers. He was extremely picky. Therefore, no matter how he purposely picked something that he thought was delicious and brought it to her mouth. However, when it came to Yin Shirshir, whose taste was a level lower than his, he completely fell for it. It was delicious. It was as delicious as Yu Yu's cooking. However, in terms of taste, Yu Yu's cooking was still better. French cuisine was exquisite and delicious, but it was not targeted. The person who understood her taste the most was Yu Yu. After a period of trial and error, the little guy had figured out what his mommy's taste was. Therefore, he would cater to her taste for every delicious meal. Therefore, she couldn't help but mutter, "It's delicious, but it's still not as good as Yu Yu's cooking." Yu Yu knows how to cook? Muyaja raised his handsome eyebrows slightly. He was obviously a little surprised. Yes. Yes. As Yin Shirshir spoke, she suddenly glared at him vigilantly. Don't even think about it. Yu Yu only cooks for me. He's my personal chef. She looked a little smug. Muyaja couldn't help but pinch her cheeks affectionately. It was quite textured. Yin Shirshir avoided his action and rubbed her belly. I'm still hungry. Feed me again. Muyaja couldn't help but laugh. His gaze swept across the dining table and landed on the fresh oyster. He scooped it up with a spoon. The soft and tender flesh made him drool. Yin Shirshir waited expectantly for his next move. Muyaja, on the other hand, continued to stuff it into his mouth. Yin Shirshir was stunned and froze for a moment. Didn't he say that he was going to feed her after it entered his mouth? What's wrong with you? Yin Shirshir's eyes were filled with silent accusation as she glared at him unhappily. She had promised to feed him, but in the end, she sent it into her own mouth. Muyaja held the fresh meat between his lips and teeth, not in a hurry to swallow it. He looked back at her indifferently, as if he was silently provoking her. Yin Shirshir was not to be outdone. She held his face and leaned over, trying to snatch the delicious food from his mouth. She pressed her lips against the corner of his lips and bit down with her pearly white teeth, snatching the fresh meat into her mouth. Delicious. She was a feast for the eyes. She was truly a feast for the eyes. No matter what a beautiful person did, it was always pleasing to the eye. Yin Shirshir was like that. Muyaja took advantage of the situation and kissed her. The tip of his tongue flicked across her lips that were covered in sauce and deeply invaded. This could be considered as helping each other in times of need. It was the most intimate way for people to be together. He carelessly and unscrupulously dotted her lips. Yin Shirshir was so shocked by his sudden invasion that she couldn't help but lean back. However, he didn't allow her to dodge. His palm clasped the back of her neck tightly, forcing her body to stick to him. He wasn't hungry at first. However, looking at her, he vaguely felt a little hungry. The tip of his tongue gently swept across every inch of her lips, licking those alluring pink lips clean. Not a single bit was left out. It was as if he was seriously tasting the delicious food. Thus, he used this method to feed her the delicious food mouth to mouth. At first, she was still a little uncomfortable, as if she wasn't used to such an intimate way of feeding. Thus, she reached out to take the knife and fork from his hand, wanting to do it herself. However, Muyaja's hand slightly avoided her movements. Chapter 644. She didn't know why, but the originally tasteless meal tasted amazingly delicious in her mouth. Muyaja was an extremely clean freak. He usually didn't like anyone getting close to him. Not to mention mouth to mouth, even if someone touched his hand, he would feel a sense of disgust from the bottom of his heart. However, with this woman, he actually longed for this kind of closeness. Mouth-to-mouth feeding should have been the most primitive way of feeding. Newborn babies didn't have the ability to move, so mothers would feed food into their children's mouths in this way. However, even many couples found it difficult to adapt to this kind of method. Just now, the fresh food was in his mouth, staining his lips and teeth. However, this woman naturally snatched the food from his mouth, without the slightest disgust in her eyes. Such intimacy caused a warm feeling to grow in the depths of his heart. He seemed to be infatuated with this woman's closeness. This feeling of longing was something that he had never felt before. At that moment, something that had long been frozen seemed to be deeply touched. He couldn't help but yearn for more of this kind of closeness. Therefore, when Yin Shirsha reached out to snatch the knife and fork in his hand, he avoided it. How could he allow his fun to be interrupted? Yin Shirsha was a little annoyed. She glared at him and said seriously, "I can do it myself. I don't need you to feed me." "I'll feed you." "No, I'll do it myself." "I'll feed you." "Hey, I'll feed you." Yin Shirsha was so angry that she frowned. How could this man be so hateful? He even deprived her of the freedom to eat. Muyaja found that her coquettish and slightly annoyed expression was actually a little cute. He liked her expression very much. "Not eating?" Muyaja saw that she was frozen in his arms and didn't move, so he asked. Yin Shirsha seemed to be angry, and didn't want to pay attention to him. She seemed to be acting coquettishly, but also seemed to be sulking. The man lowered his head slightly and asked, "Are you full?" Yin Shirsha pursed her lips tightly and seemed to ignore him. "Since you're full, it's your turn to feed me." As Muyaja spoke, his warm palms slowly extended into her skirt, following her soft and tender skin to explore the mysterious area. Yin Shirsha was so shocked that she hurriedly stopped him. Somewhat embarrassed and annoyed, she said, "What are you doing?" "Eat you. You. What are you thinking about all day long?" Yin Shirsha felt angry and amused at the same time. "I was thinking about how to eat you." Yin Shirsha was completely speechless. She only said gloomily, "But I'm not full yet." Muyaja raised his eyebrows slightly, sucking on another piece of steak as he inched closer to her face. But this time she couldn't care less about it. He was simply too hungry. Once a person was hungry, they couldn't care less. Thus, she gently hugged his shoulders and took the food from his mouth, swallowing it happily. He tirelessly used such a complicated method to feed her again and again. And Yin Shirsha gradually accepted the way he fed her. Like an obedient kitten, she nestled in the man's arms and took the food from his mouth calmly. In the process, more than half of the delicious food on the table was quickly gone. Muyaja sucked on a mouthful of foie gras. After feeding her, he took the opportunity to kiss her again. Chapter 645. He hugged her to sit on his body and deepen the kiss. Yin Shirsha still had some sense. She realized that they were in the restaurant's private room, and she didn't know when someone would break in, so she couldn't help but feel nervous. "Don't be here. Someone will come in later." "No." He coaxed her with his lips against hers. This was his world. Without his orders and summons, who would dare to step in here? Her apprehension was therefore entirely superfluous. Yin Shirsha couldn't resist and could only let him kiss her deeper. It had to be said that Muyaja's kissing skills weren't exquisite at first. When he first kissed her, he took her by force. He was overbearing, but he was also a little clumsy. But now, his kissing skills were superb and exquisite, and he was already on her finger. She wasn't his opponent at all. After a lingering kiss, she felt as if she was about to turn into a pool of spring water in his arms. He didn't even take the next step. Just by kissing like this, She felt as if there was an electric current running up her spine, and her heart was beating fast. Yin Shishir's shoulders couldn't help trembling slightly and she shivered. She couldn't help but reach out her hand to resist his attack. Wuxia, however, took the opportunity to kiss her jade-like fingertips and peck them lightly. A numbness instantly spread from her fingertips to her heart. Then he lifted her chin with his slender fingers, lowered his eyes, and kissed her on the lips, twisting and rubbing against her. Wuxia hugged her waist and stood up with her in his arms. She let out a cry of surprise, and by the time he came back to his senses, she was already in an ambiguous position with her body pressed tightly against his. It was so ambiguous that it was unreasonable. The temperature in the room suddenly rose. Wuxia pecked her lips and whispered in her ear, "Sure, stay with me." His voice was clear, deep, and extremely magnetic, but inadvertently revealed an unprecedented pampering. He said that he wanted her to be with him. He gave her the whole world. His whole world. Yin Shishir's face couldn't help but heat up a little. She slowly nodded and softly said, "N," which could be considered a happy agreement. Okay, be together. She would give him the whole world. Her whole world. There was another private room in the private room. The bathroom, bed, sofa, everything was fully equipped, just like a dreamy suite. Wuxia carried her to the sofa and carefully placed her on it. It was as if she was an extremely fragile treasure. His gentle movements made her feel as if she was in a dream. It was as if she had never been so gently doted on by a man before. Could it be a dream? Yin Shishir was inexplicably worried about personal gains and losses. She was scared witless. He was afraid that everything in front of him was just a dream. When the dream was shattered, he woke up. Yin Shishir was in a daze. She couldn't help but reach out her hand and caress his handsome face. Her slender fingers caressed every inch of his extraordinary features. It was unbelievably real. It was not a dream. Her fingertips couldn't help but tremble slightly. Wuxia held her hand and kissed it gently. Then their fingers intertwined and his body slowly covered hers. In this position, he entered her. There was no aggressive attack, no forceful taking. His movements were gentler than any other time. He cherished her. He couldn't bear to hurt her. He wanted her to clearly feel how wonderful it was to make love with him. In the aftertaste of love, she gently closed her eyes and lay in his arms. She rested her head on his warm chest and wrapped her fingers around the necklace on her collarbone. The diamond embedded in the pendant was cut into the shape of a beautiful shooting star. It was exquisite, noble, and elegant. Chapter 646. It was so beautiful. Yin Shishir's eyes were curved, and her eyes were bright as if she was smiling. She liked the pendant so much that she couldn't bear to part with it. She didn't hide her love for the pendant at all. Seeing that she seemed to really like it, he was very happy. Minyu, this kid, was not bad sometimes when he came up with ideas. Wuxia wrapped one arm around her body, lowered his head, and kissed her gently between her eyebrows. Yin Shishir pursed her lips and smiled shyly. Her fair, jade-like face was pink and tender. She was obviously shy, and the shallow dimples on her cheeks made her look a little lovey-dovey. Her dimples were very beautiful. They were shallow and small. And when she smiled, they were too sweet. Wuxia couldn't help but kiss her dimples with infatuation. He really liked her naive look. She was lively and fragrant. She was charming and enchanting. She was clearly such a tender and pure beauty, but her bones seemed to exude the most primitive temptation of a woman, like a charm. He even suspected that this woman must have been a disaster in her previous life. She was born in ancient times and deserved to be a demon concubine who bewitched the emperor. Looking at her lovely appearance, Wuxia's throat moved, and his lower abdomen faintly tightened again. No matter how much he wanted this woman, he could never get enough of her. Yin Shishir had no idea what kind of deep water the man beside her was in at this moment. And she also didn't know that this man loved her dearly and was trying hard to suppress the vigorous lust in his body. She suddenly looked up and smiled. She thought for a moment and asked carefully, "Wuxia, I want to ask you a question." Wuxia suddenly said a word, but Yin Shishir was a little stunned. She didn't understand the meaning of the word. Wuxia saw her stunned expression and couldn't help but reach out to touch her nose. He laughed and said, "Little fool, you don't have to call my name." When he said that, Yin Shirshir was smart enough to understand the meaning of his words. She blushed and asked tentatively, "Je." Her voice was soft and gentle, but her one word was enough to melt his bones. It was just a single syllable, but it was full of killing power. It was as if an electric current was flowing through his limbs and bones. To be able to use this title on him meant that they were the closest people to him. Yin Shirshir was the first. Her voice was soft, and it was very pleasing to the ears. He liked her calling him that. Thus, Muyaja lightly pecked her lips and requested, "Say it again." Yin Shirshir pursed her lips. She was obviously a little shy. "Say it again. Je, make it softer." "Sha." Satisfied, Muyaja kissed her on the lips again as if rewarding her. The tip of his tongue traced the contours of her lips lovingly. Yin Shirshir pushed him away coquettishly. "Hey, why are you like this?" "What?" "I just wanted to ask you a question. Let's talk about it later." Muyaja didn't have the heart to care about other things. He only wanted to taste her beauty and tenderness to his heart's content. Yin Shirshir saw that the handsome face was unscrupulously pressing down on her, and reached out to block his lips. "Can I see Xiao Yichen in the future?" she murmured softly. Her face was obviously nervous and pleading. She liked Xiao Yichen very much, and she also felt sorry for this child. Chapter 647. The last time she saw this child at the amusement park, even though they had been estranged for 6 years, she still felt extremely close to him. Mother and son were connected by blood. He was, after all, her flesh and blood. She had not seen this child for 6 years, but her yearning for him had never stopped. That day, when little Yichen complained in front of her that Daddy doesn't want me anymore, her heart had also broken into pieces. Her heart ached for this child. When Yu was young, she studied many books on child psychology. Yu only had her as his mother. He never knew who his father was. When he was in kindergarten, Yu would often ask her if he had a father. Every time this happened, Yin Shirshir's heart would ache terribly. She had always worked hard for Yu. He only had her. Without a father, his family was not complete. Thus, she tried her best to create a happy childhood for him. She did not want him to become an emotional orphan. Yu, on the other hand, was sensible and well-behaved. Later, he did not ask about his father. The mother and son depended on each other. With her hard work, Yu did not have a lonely childhood. However, when she saw Xiao Yichen at the amusement park that day, she saw undisguised loneliness in his eyes. Lonely. This child looked very lonely. She was surprised by this turn of events. It was different from Yin Tianyu. From the moment Xiao Yichen was born with a silver spoon in his mouth, he was destined to be doted on. Yu did not have a father. Xiao Yichen, on the other hand, had a father and a mother. Logically speaking, this child should not be so lonely and should have a blissful and wonderful childhood. However, when Yin Shirshir saw Xiao Yichen's lonely and empty eyes that day, she felt as if a deep wound had been torn in her heart. The pain was unbearable. He was like a severely injured animal curled up in a corner, licking his wounds alone. It was not that Yin Shirshir was not surprised. How did this child survive for the past 6 years? Could it be that Muyaja did not love him enough? However, after Yin Shirshir thought about it, after understanding Mu Wanru's character, she knew that she wouldn't spend much effort on Xiao Yichen. After all, she wasn't his biological daughter. After all, it was not a piece of meat that fell from his body. When it came to Xiao Yichen, how could he expect Mu Wanru to have any maternal instincts? Did he want Mu Wanru to dote on Xiao Yichen like her own son? Presumably, Mu Wanru was only doing this for Muyaja's sake. On the surface, she treated Xiao Yichen like a son, but in reality, children were sensitive and could acutely sense the emotions of adults. It was obvious that Xiao Yichen was not close to Mu Wanru. As for Muyaja, he was Xiao Yichen's father. Naturally, he had to play the role of a strict father. In a child's heart, if a mother was a gentle harbor, then a father should be a strict and imposing figure. He should be a great hero. Without a doubt, Muyaja was very strict with Xiao Yichen's education. This child was really amazing. She had seen his skills. In the haunted house, his kick in the air was comparable to that of an adult man. Although he was only 6 years old, he already had the bearing of a young man in his every movement. Chapter 648. She wanted to make it up to this child. Mu Yaja caught the pleading and cautious look in Yin Shishir's eyes. He could not help but recall that day at the hospital when Yin Shishir carried Yu away. Xiao Yichen chased after her reluctantly with tears streaming down his cheeks. Sometimes, one's bloodline was a very mysterious thing. Yin Shishir did not know. Mu Yaja, however, knew. It was not that Mu Wanru had not tried to enter Xiao Yichen's heart. She tried to please and dote on Xiao Yichen, but she could not get him close to Mu Wanru from the bottom of his heart. However, although Yin Shishir and Xiao Yichen had only interacted for half a day at most, Xiao Yichen was obviously very concerned about her. This child was cold on the outside but warm on the inside. This was very similar to him. He was the same when he was young. Other than his mother, he was not close to anyone. After his mother passed away, he sealed his heart. As for Xiao Yichen, other than in front of him, he seemed to be as cold as frost when interacting with others. He was not close to anyone. Even Mu Sheng, who loved him to the bone, kept a distance from the little lad. He sealed himself in his own world. He was very strict with Xiao Yichen. When Xiao Yichen was only 4 years old, he threw him into the special training camp and underwent hellish training from a young age. The child was in awe of him. Yet he yearned to be close to him. It was just that he was usually busy with work and could not take care of everything. Hence, it was inevitable that he would neglect to interact with the child. Thinking of this, Mu Yaja could not help but laugh. It seemed that he was not a very qualified father. His gaze fell on her as he replied blandly, "Of course you can." Yin Shishir was slightly stunned when she heard this. Then, her eyes widened in surprise. She was caught off guard by this sudden happiness. Really? How could this man agree so easily? She was in disbelief. Yin Shishir was a woman who knew how to adapt to the circumstances. She loved Xiao Yichen very much, but she did not forget that she had signed a contract with him. The terms of the contract stated that she would unconditionally give up custody of Xiao Yichen. However, things were different now. Mu Yaja promised her that he would give her the whole world, his whole world. However, she did not ask for much. She only wanted a home with him and 2 children. She initially thought that the man would, at most, promise her to meet little Yichen once in a while. She did not expect him to agree so decisively. Her heart was filled. The man's lips curled into a smile. Why not? This was their child's. Was SSSSSSSS. She was Xiao Yichen's biological mother. Why couldn't she see Xiao Yichen? Thank you. Yin Shishir smiled contentedly. Is that all? Mu Yaja lowered his eyes and looked at her. Obviously, he was not satisfied with such a simple word. Thank you? He did not need a verbal thank you. Yin Shishir was not enlightened in this aspect, so she could not understand the meaning behind his words. It was often said that a woman's heart was like a needle at the bottom of the sea. However, she did not know that a man's heart was deeper than the sea. Especially a black-bellied man like Mu Yaja. He was even more unfathomable and unpredictable. Mu Yaja lifted his chin slightly and looked at her from the corner of his eyes. The meaning in his eyes could not be more obvious. Yin Shishir understood the meaning in his eyes. This man was really a kissing maniac. Chapter 649. Yin Shishir hooked her arm around the back of his neck and pressed her lips tightly against his. Mu Yaja cupped the back of her head with his hand and deepened the kiss. Charming, deep, and reluctant to part. Just as Yin Shishir thought that she was about to suffocate, the kiss ended abruptly. Yin Shishir snuggled in his arms lazily like a kitten. Suddenly, she thought of something and said, "Mu Yaja." Just as she said those 3 words, the man's light gaze landed on her face. Yin Shishir blushed and stammered, "Ja." Only then did the man's lips curl into a satisfied smile. "Xiao Yichen, I think he's very skilled. Have you been training him since he was young?" Mu Yaja replied, "Yes. I sent him to the training camp when he was 4. The Cheetah Commando unit was the top special forces unit. The training was not the usual harsh. The elite soldiers from the Cheetah Commando unit could not be compared to the average soldiers. They were the elite soldiers in the truest sense. It was not an exaggeration to say that they licked the blood from the muzzle. Yin Shishir could not help but click her tongue. No wonder that child's skills are so abnormal. You've been training him like this since he was young? The corner of Mu Yaja's lips twitched slightly. Did this woman just say that Xiao Yichen was abnormal? May I ask then, what was Yin Tianyou's rank? Xiao Yichen was skilled in martial arts because he had specially guided the child to this path. He had put in a lot of effort into this child. What about Yin Tianyou though? This child was the real terror. He was self-taught in the truest sense. He was simply a business genius. It was obvious that Yin Shishir only treated him as an ordinary 6-year-old child. She did not even enroll him in a hobby course. This child, however, had naturally evolved. At the age of 7, he was already worth hundreds of millions. This was a real abnormality, alright? Compared to him, Xiao Yichen was obviously much more normal in a sense. Yin Shishir did not notice the strange look in Mu Yaja's eyes, and only rebuked him. The child is still so young. Yet you're imposing so much training on him. This will hinder his development. A 6-year-old child should be at the age of being carefree. He should be given a free childhood. Xiao Yichen's talent in this area since he was young. Mu Yaja's voice. Yin Shishir was clearly surprised by this. Mu Yaja glanced at her and smiled. If this child is properly groomed, she'll become a genius strategist. One was Yu, the other was little Yichen. Things like genes were truly inconceivable. Yin Shishir shook her head in a daze. I still think that Xiao Yichen's ability is too abnormal. It's really unscientific for a child to have the skills of an adult. Mu Yaja's brows twitched violently. This stupid woman. Compared to Yu, that little demon king, Xiao Yichen was no longer abnormal. In comparison, Xiao Yichen was practically a little angel. Xiao Yichen's skills were indeed frightening, but his mentality was not much different from that of a child his age. Yin Tianyou's EQ and IQ were no longer in the category of a child. Yin Shishir had not seen the frightening side of Yin Tianyou, but Mu Yaja had experienced this child's skills. Chapter 650. The two of them were silent for a long time. Yin Shishir couldn't help but ask. There was a doubt that had been lingering in her heart for a long time. She had always wanted to ask him for confirmation, but she never had the chance. After thinking for a long time, she still wanted to ask him. Mu Yaja, can I ask you a question? Yin Shishir suddenly asked. Yes, ask. Yin Shishir suddenly sat up straight and faced him, her eyes calm. You should know my identity. Mu Yaja was stunned, but he soon understood what Yin Shishir was referring to. After careful consideration, he decided not to hide it from her, so he confessed. I found out about your identity 6 years ago. Yin Shishir was shocked. She would never have thought that this man would have found out about her identity 6 years ago. How did you know about my identity? DNA. He looked up. Have you forgotten? 6 years ago, before you signed the surrogacy contract, you did a blood test. Your blood sample report shows that your blood type is MNSSU. This blood type is very rare, the rarest of the rare blood types. Yin Shishir frowned slightly. Her blood type was indeed very rare in the world. But how could you be so sure that I'm Mu Qingqing's daughter just based on my blood type? Yin Shishir asked. You know, there are many coincidences. Maybe it's just a coincidence. He looked at her and suddenly said, You look very much like her, very much like her. They were exactly the same. Especially her temperament and charm. It was impossible to replicate. If her photo was placed next to Mu Qingqing's, no one would suspect that they were not mother and daughter. Mu Yaja still retained the appearance of Mu Qingqing when she was young in the depths of his memory. When Mu Qingqing left the Mu family, he was already 5 years old and could remember things. Even if his memory of Mu Qingqing was very vague, her beautiful face was deeply engraved in his memory and left a deep impression. When he saw her photo 6 years ago, he felt that she was somewhat familiar. It was only when he saw Mu Qingqing's photo in Mu Sheng's study that his suspicions were confirmed. Therefore, he ordered the hospital to take Yin Shishir's blood sample for a paternity test. The DNA database still has Mu Qingqing's DNA report. After comparison, your DNA matches hers perfectly. This answer completely confirmed his guess. Mu Yaja lowered his gaze and met her eyes. I've already found out that you're Mu Qingqing's daughter. So you already knew? Yin Shishir smiled bitterly. She lowered her eyes slightly and slowly said, Mu Wanru stole my jade pendant. By a freak combination of factors, she took my identity and was recognized by the Mu Jia. Sadly, I only found out about this matter recently. From the moment she entered the Mu family, I thought that she was very suspicious. Yin Shishir was a little surprised. Then why didn't you say anything? Is it important? Mu Yaja suddenly asked. Who was Mu Wanru? Was her identity real? It did not matter to him. Why is it not important? Yin Shishir smiled bitterly. If fate didn't play tricks on me, I would have been your fiancé from the start. They would not have met so late. She would not have met him in such an awkward position. Chapter 651. If not, they would not have met so late. She would not have faced him in such an awkward position. Instead, she would have stood beside him as his legitimate fiancé. Mu Yaja smiled at this. He could not help but ruffle her silky hair. This silly woman must have thought that if she were the one who had returned to the Mu family 15 years ago, she would have become his legitimate fiancé. Alas, he did not think so. In a way, if Mu Wanru had not replaced her, he might not have fallen in love with this woman. 15 years ago, he could only resist and reject Mu Qingqing. The young Mu Yaja harbored a strong enmity toward this woman. Mu Qingqing was the woman his father dreamed of, and the woman his mother hated for the rest of her life. She was the woman his father cherished for the rest of his life. Mu Lianqing had given her his love for the rest of his life. His heart had always been with Mu Qingqing, and it had never left her. Infatuation and devotion. Jiang Yishan's initial anger and humiliation to her eventual despair and depression were all caused by this woman. In Mu Yaja's mind, Mu Qingqing was undoubtedly a woman who had committed a heinous crime. It was this woman who, without any effort, made his parents' marriage disappear in name only. She was the main culprit. Hence, when Mu Xing pushed the 9-year-old Mu Wanru in front of him and told him that she was Mu Qingqing's daughter, his younger sister, and his future wife, Mu Yaja was furious. Mu Yaja looked at Mu Wanru with eyes full of disgust. He found her disgusting. However, for the inheritance of the Mu family's head, he did not hesitate to use her. He used her as the price to obtain the inheritance of Dishing Financial Group. It was only when he grew up that he understood. His father and mother's marriage was a sacrifice in the game between the rich and powerful. This marriage had nothing to do with romance or love. One had no choice but to marry, and the other had no choice but to marry. It was a transaction in name only. Mu Qingqing was not a third party. On the contrary, she had always been a chaste woman. However, his father's infatuation with Mu Qingqing had never changed. Only then did he erase his hatred towards Mu Qingqing. Perhaps, if she were the one Mu Sheng had brought back to the Mu family 15 years ago, he did not even dare to imagine if she would become his pawn. Mu Wanru replaced her identity and entered the Mu family, but she also replaced her and became the chess piece in his hands. To replace her as the victim. Fate seemed to have its own will. They had met at just the right time. Sometimes, a freak combination of factors might not actually be a freak combination of factors. However, in order to meet her, he had probably used up all his luck. 6 years ago, Mu Wanru was found to be infertile. You should know about this. Mu Yaja suddenly said slowly. Yin Shishir nodded. Yes, I know. He lowered his gaze. She wasn't born infertile. When Yin Shishir heard this, she widened her eyes in shock and looked at him in disbelief. How can that be? I heard that the Mu family even invited the most authoritative medical research center in the country for this matter. Dishing Financial Group controls 40% of the country's medical market share. Mu Yaja's lips curled into an extremely sinister smile. That's why it's not difficult for me to forge a diagnosis. Chapter 652. What do you mean? She somewhat understood, but also somewhat did not understand. She always felt that Mu Wanru's pregnancy was very suspicious from the beginning to the end. Thinking about it carefully, it's very strange. 6 years ago, Mu Wanru rushed into the room and condescendingly threatened her. If not for her infertility, she would not be the surrogate. Therefore, she learned that the fiancé of the employer who signed the contract with her was infertile. How could a person who had been judged by various authoritative organizations suddenly get pregnant? It's extremely strange. It's simply impossible. Although there are miracles, Mu Wanru's miracle is too strange. Mu Yaja looked at her face that constantly changed and slowly said, her so-called infertility diagnosis was forged by me. Forged by others. Yes. What kind of power does this man have? In the capital, Mu Yaja's family business is big, and he can cover the sky with one hand. And Mu Yaja is a person who can turn clouds and rain with a wave of his hand, playing with a lot of carnage. To forge a certificate of infertility, for him, it's just a matter of moving his mouth. But why did you do this? Yin Shirshir was shocked and asked the confusion in her heart. Mu Yaja's eyes slightly twitched, and the bottom of his eyes burst out a biting cold light, but he said lightly, because she is a chess piece. A chess piece must obey the will of the master. This is the duty of a chess piece. Yin Shirshir was shocked. However, after thinking about it carefully, she was not surprised. Such ruthless and indifferent words, from his mouth, she did not feel strange. However, she still felt confused. Chess piece? What chess piece? At the beginning, Grandpa ordered me to marry her. Mu Yaja hooked up his lips and smiled. If I get engaged with her, I can get the inheritance of the Mujia's lord. The Mujia is very big, but not everyone is qualified to enter the Mujia's main house. Only the Mujia's patriarch and the next generation's patriarch are eligible to live in the Mujia's main residence. At that time, his father had passed away. In such a large clan, he and his mother depended on each other for survival, and every step they took was filled with trepidation. The Mujia also has many factions within the Mujia. Both the direct descendants and the cadet branches were eyeing him like a tiger watching its prey. He was Mu Sheng's proudest grandson, and the most favorable candidate to be the next head of the family. Thus, there was no doubt that he had become a thorn in the side of those people. Many people wanted to get rid of him. Every day, every moment, passed with fear and trepidation. Therefore, at that time, the inheritance of the Mu family was undoubtedly a protective talisman for him and his mother. At that time, grandfather was old and his health was deteriorating. After my father passed away, the position of the head of the family had always been empty. Many people were eyeing it covetously, and grandfather had always been hesitant about whether he should settle the position of the head of the family. Mu Yaja said expressionlessly, as for me, as the most powerful candidate, many people are eyeing me covetously, but I wasn't old enough then. In order to get the power of succession, I used marriage as a bargaining chip. Mu Wanru, on the other hand, is just a pawn for me to use. Do you think I'll have feelings for a chess piece? Yin Shirshir's heart turned cold. This man, he was actually so cold and two-faced. He could actually use someone to this extent. If Mu Wanru knew that her infertility diagnosis was all used by this man, and she was the victim of his schemes, how would she feel?